Only the Lord of the Thundercats! Thundercats!
Thundercats, 1985. If you were a kid in the 80s, you probably feel a wave of nostalgia whenever Thundercats comes to mind. Produced by Rankin Bass Productions and animated by Pacific Animation Corporation, Season 1 kicked off an exciting journey for one of the decade's favourite cartoon series. What do you think made Thundercats so memorable? Was it the exciting battles, the rich lore, or the amazing animation that mixed Western storytelling with anime vibes? Truthfully, most of its popularity comes from the fact that the show mixed sci-fi, fantasy, and high-energy action seamlessly. Besides, a variety of heroes really stood out, like the wise Jaga, the quick Chitara, and the playful Wily Kit and Wily Cat. Whether you were cheering for Panthro's cool gadgets or laughing at Snarf's funny moments, Thundercats was more than just a cartoon. It was an adventure that inspired a whole generation's imagination. So, are you ready to relive the magic of Third Earth as we explore the entire first season of the show? Also, before you embark on this journey, we humbly request you to subscribe to our channel for more of this cartoon nostalgia, and also hit the like button if you appreciate our efforts. Episode 1. Aboard the Thunderian flagship, the Thundercats stand together, watching in horror as their beloved home, Thundera, meets its end. The planet trembles, its core rupturing before it explodes into nothingness. Young Lion-O stares in shock, grief tightening his chest. Jaga, ever the wise mentor, gives Lion-O a steadfast consolation that even with Thundera gone, its code is alive and well because it lives in him. Jaga leads him to the sword chamber, where the legendary Sword of Omens rests. As the other Thundercats gather, Jaga bestows upon them weapons and protective clothing, preparing them for the trials ahead. Suddenly, alarms blare. The ship is under attack. The mutants strike with ruthless precision, destroying the entire convoy, leaving only the flagship intact. They board, and battle erupts. Amidst the chaos, Slithe and Jackalman break into the sword chamber, where Lion-O and Snarf stand guard. At first, they mock the young Thundercat, who is struggling to lift the sword, but their jeers turn to fear when, summoning all his strength, Lion-O raises the blade. The Sword of Omens roars to life, forcing the mutants to flee. Despite their victory, the ship is gravely damaged. Panthro calculates that they can no longer reach their intended destination. Instead, they must head for a distant world, Third Earth, but the journey spans light years. The Thundercats enter suspension capsules, their only chance at survival. Jaga, however, refuses. The ship is too damaged for autopilot, he explains. And even in suspension, time will take its toll. I would not survive. The Thundercats bid him a tearful farewell before slipping into stasis. For years, Jaga pilots the ship until exhaustion claims him. His body fades into nothingness as the flagship hurtles toward Third Earth, crash landing. Lion-O and Snarf's capsules are thrown clear of the wreckage. When Snarf wakes, he finds that Lion-O is no longer a boy. He has grown into a man. The mutants arrive soon after, attacking the slumbering Thundercats. Lion-O leaps into battle, fighting with newfound strength. Snarf tosses him the Sword of Omens, and its power awakens the others. The Thundercats rise, forcing the mutants into retreat. Their new journey begins.
In a moment, the eye of Thundera will be mine to command.
Episode 2. The Unholy Alliance. As the Thundercats adjust to their new home on Third Earth, their first task is salvaging whatever they can from their wrecked flagship. While most of their technology is damaged beyond repair, Panthro remains hopeful. There's just enough Thundrillium for him to build a Thunder Tank. Meanwhile, Tigra and Chitara scout for a suitable location to establish their new base, Cat's Lair. Lion-O, however, has other ideas. Eager to explore, he ventures alone into the nearby forest, bringing only the Sword of Omens and Claw Shield for protection. Elsewhere, the mutants, also seeking a stronghold, stumble upon an ancient pyramid. As they approach, powerful bolts of lightning strike from its surrounding obelisks, forcing them to land. A spectral ball of fire appears, guiding them inside. Though hesitant, Jackalman and Monkeyan follow Slythe into a vast chamber where a sarcophagus rests at its centre. From within, a monstrous bandaged figure emerges. Mumra, an ancient sorcerer. He proposes an alliance to claim the Eye of Thunderer, but the mutants scoff, boasting that they could destroy his pyramid with their ship's cannons. Mumra barely reacts before demonstrating his power. He sinks their ship beneath the earth, leaving them no choice but to accept his deal. Using his magic, Mumra transports the mutants to Lion-O's location in the forest. They ambush the young Thundercat, hoping to seize the Sword of Omens. But Lion-O summons reinforcements, and with Panthro, Wily-Kit, and Wily-Cat arriving just in time, the mutants are driven off. Back at the pyramid, their mockery of Mumra proves unwise. Furious, he transforms into his towering, ever-living form and takes matters into his own hands. Deep in the forest, Lion-O continues searching for Tigra and Chitara when he stumbles upon a pool of thick, bubbling black tar. As he tests its strange, sticky surface, Mumra strikes. In the struggle, the Sword of Omens falls into the tar, its power subdued. Desperate, Lion-O raises his claw shield, its reflective surface revealing Mumra's monstrous image. The sorcerer recoils in horror and vanishes. The other Thundercats, drawn by the commotion, arrive just as Lion-O catches his breath. Shaken but determined, he tells them about the fearsome being who calls himself Mumra, the ever-living. Episode 3, Burbles. Panthro beamed with pride as he unveiled the new Thunder tank, built entirely from salvaged parts of their wrecked flagship. The other Thundercats admired his handiwork, but before they could celebrate, a sudden hailstorm erupted. Stones and boulders pelted the landscape, forcing the team to seek shelter inside the flagship. But Panthro refused to abandon his baby. Braving the storm, he used the Thunder tank to clear away the heavy debris, digging out the buried ship with skillful precision. Meanwhile, Lion-O and Snarf were scouting a nearby forest when they encountered a large, rhino-like creature. Though imposing, it proved harmless, and they pressed on, only for Lion-O to fall into a deep pit. Snarf frantically tried to pull him out, but before he could, they were both captured by robotic bears. The strange beings escorted them to their village, where their leader, Robear Bill, introduced himself. The bears, known as Burbles, were an intelligent and kind-hearted race who had journeyed to Third Earth from their distant home planet, Robear. As Robear Bill gave them a tour of the village, an alarm sounded, an incoming attack. He explained that the Trollocs, bulldog-like raiders, frequently stormed the village to steal the Burbles' precious burble fruit. However, the real masterminds were the Giantaurs, massive humanoids who forced the Trollocs to do their bidding in exchange for the leaves of the trollberry bushes, their only food source. The Burbles, reluctant to harm the Trollocs, fought back with nothing more than crude darts. Seeing them overwhelmed, Lion-O sprang into action, brandishing the Sword of Omens. The Trollocs fled in terror, but their failure enraged the Giantaurs, who decided to attack the village themselves. Lion-O quickly summoned the other Thundercats, and together, with the power of the Thunder tank, they repelled the enormous brutes. Unbeknownst to them, Mumra had been watching from his black pyramid. Furious that the Thundercats now had an ally to provide them with food, he transformed into a swarm of locusts, descending upon the village. The locusts merged into one massive insect, but Lion-O leaped onto its back, steering it away. When the locusts scattered above a volcano, Lion-O plummeted towards certain doom until Jagger's spirit appeared, urging him to call upon the Sword of Omens. The sword responded, pulling Lion-O to safety. That evening, the grateful Burbles hosted a grand feast in honor of their new friends. As they celebrated, Robear Bill noticed Tigra's blueprints for Cat's lair and offered the Burbles help in constructing it. Overwhelmed by their generosity, the Thundercats gladly accepted, knowing that with allies like these, they had a true home in the making. Episode 4, The Slaves of Castle Plundar. While exploring the forest, Wily-Kit and Wily-Cat stumble upon a shocking sight. The mutants are forcing a group of beings known as the Brute Men to build their fortress, Castle Plundar. Hidden among the trees, the Thunder Kittens watch in horror as the mutants treat the Brute Men like slaves, whipping and beating them into submission. But their cover doesn't last long. Monkey spots them and attacks, forcing the twins to flee. Meanwhile, the rest of the Thundercats are hard at work constructing their own stronghold, Cat's Lair, with help from the Burbles. The Thunder Kittens arrive, breathless and agitated, and quickly tell the others what they've seen. Robert Bill explains that the Brute Men are a primitive, peaceful race who lack the ability to defend themselves. Determined to put an end to the mutants' cruelty, the Thundercats set out in the Thunder Tank, leaving the kittens behind to guard their home. With a powerful crash, the Thunder Tank breaks through the mutants' barricade, and the Thundercats leap into action. Panthro, Tigra, and Chitara each face off against Slythe, Monkian, and Jackalman, making short work of the villainous trio. Meanwhile, Lion-O infiltrates Castle Plundar, freeing the Brute Men from their cells. Slythe, seeing his captives escape, reveals a backup plan. He hurls a warp gas grenade into the crowd, and within moments, the once docile Brute Men transform into raging berserkers. Lion-O is quickly overwhelmed. Before they can turn on the others, the gas wears off and the Brute Men return to their harmless selves. Refusing to admit defeat, Slythe tosses another grenade, but this time, the Thundercats are ready. Lion-O swings the Sword of Omens in wide arcs, using its power to fan the toxic gas back toward the mutants. Enveloped in the fumes, Slythe and his gang become meek and cowardly, fleeing inside their fortress. But the Brute Men, still affected by the gas, turn on Lion-O again. He stands firm, unwilling to strike them, even as his friends urge him to retreat. Fortunately, the effect fades just in time, and the Brute Men, freed at last, return peacefully to their homes.
1,000 years more, 5,000, you cannot defeat me.
Episode 5, Pumra. As Panthro and Tigra stood inside Cat's Lair, peering through the fortress's powerful telescopes, they scanned the surrounding landscape. Everything seemed calm until they spotted something moving rapidly near the volcano. Their momentary concern faded when they realized it was just Chitara, out for her usual morning run. With no signs of trouble, Panthro and Tigra decided to take the Thunder Tank out to inspect the volcano up close. Meanwhile, Chitara, mid-lap, suddenly collapsed. From the shadows, Jackalman and Monkian emerged, swiftly lifting her unconscious form onto a crude stretcher and carrying her away. Their ambush had gone exactly as planned. It was all part of Mum-Ra's latest scheme. The ancient mummy had assumed the guise of Pum-Ra, a feline Thunderian. When Chitara regained consciousness, she found Pum-Ra at her side, claiming to have rescued her from the mutants. With a fabricated tale of his escape from Thunderer's destruction, he quickly earned her trust. Back at Cat's Lair, Chitara introduced Pum-Ra to the other Thundercats. Lion-O, eager to welcome another Thunderian, was ready to make him an official Thundercat. However, Panthro and Tigra remained cautious and suggested a week-long trial period instead. That night, as the others slept, Pum-Ra got to work, sabotaging both the lair and the Thunder Tank before using his knowledge of ancient mechanisms to unlock the sword chamber. With the Sword of Omens and Claw Shield in hand, he prepared for the next phase of his plan. At dawn, most of the Thundercats set out for the Thundrillium fields, leaving Lion-O and Snarf behind. Seizing the moment, Pum-Ra activated the lair's electronic eyes, signaling the mutants to attack. When he attempted to use the Sword of Omens against Lion-O, divine lightning struck, forcing him to drop the weapon. Lion-O swiftly reclaimed it, and the arrival of the Thundercats turned the tide against the mutants, sending them retreating. Desperate, Pum-Ra barricaded himself inside the lair. Tigra braved the perilous power exhaust pipes to infiltrate the fortress, just as Pum-Ra activated the lair's deadly laser beams. Using his invisibility, Tigra caught Pum-Ra off guard, overpowering him in the main control room. As the other Thundercats arrived, the defeated Pum-Ra revealed his true form, Mum-Ra, the ever-living before fleeing back to the Black Pyramid. Episode 6, The Terror of Hammer Hand. The Berserker's ship loomed near the shore, its massive hull cutting through the waves like a predator closing in. Hammer Hand and his ruthless crew, Viking-like pirates hardened by the sea, were starving after their long voyage. Spotting movement on the beach, they cast a net hoping for an easy meal. But what they caught was no ordinary creature. A baby unicorn, delicate yet radiant, struggled against the ropes. Nearby, Snarf, ever the protector, sprang into action. He gnawed through the netting, freeing the unicorn just in time. But his heroism cost him. Before he could escape, the berserkers seized him instead. Deep in the forest, Lion-O stumbled upon another unicorn, ensnared by the gnarled branches of a monstrous tree. With a swift strike, he freed the creature, only for a giant crow to swoop down and snatch the Sword of Omens from his grasp. Before he could react, the unicorn touched its horn to his hand, and a glowing ring appeared. As soon as he slipped it on, he vanished, only to reappear on the back of the crow. With a well-timed leap, he reclaimed his sword and landed safely. Just then, the Sword of Omens pulsed with warning. Snarf was in danger. Racing toward the shore, Lion-O met the unicorn keepers, who spoke of their endless struggle to protect the mystical creatures. But before they could say more, the berserkers stormed in. Lion-O faced off against Hammerhand, their battle fierce. But when Snarf's life was threatened, he was forced to surrender. Determined to save his friend, Lion-O pursued the pirates to sea, boarding their ship and fighting off the crew. Snarf, however, lost his footing and tumbled into the ocean, followed by the baby unicorn. Just then, the Thunder Tank roared onto the scene. Panthro and Chitara had arrived. While Chitara held the berserkers at bay, Panthro used the tank's speed to churn the waters into a powerful whirlpool. The raging currents dragged the ship under, taking the berserkers with it. As the waves calmed, the baby unicorn swam to shore, reuniting with its mother. Lion-O returned the enchanted ring, watching as the unicorn's horn glowed with quiet gratitude. As they stole another victory in their names, the Thundercats made their way home. Episode 7, Trouble with Time. The mutants of Castle Plundar were in an uproar. Their meals, prepared by the reptilian cook, were as unappetizing as ever, leading to a heated argument. Monkian, the most vocal among them, declared that their situation would improve if they had proper servants, especially cooks. Pleased with the idea, Slythe instructed Monkian to bring back a few worthy specimens. Though reluctant, Monkian set off on his mission. Deep in the forest, Nader was fishing peacefully by the river when Monkian ambushed her. Before he could escape with his captive Willa, Nader's elder sister and queen of the warrior maidens, arrived with her bow drawn. A few well-placed arrows forced Monkian to flee, leaving Nader unharmed. As they watched him disappear, the sisters vented their frustration about how the arrival of both the mutants and the Thundercats had disrupted their once peaceful lives. Nader even suggested that perhaps it was time to rid Third Earth of these outsiders altogether. Back at Cat's Lair, all was quiet, until Lion-O decided to take the Thunder Tank for a joyride. Ignoring Snarf's protests, he jumped into the driver's seat, only to quickly lose control. The tank rumbled and roared, narrowly avoiding disaster at every turn. The commotion drew Panthro, who leapt into the vehicle just in time to slam on the brakes, stopping it inches from a steep cliff. Furious, Panthro scolded Lion-O for wasting Thundrillium, their precious fuel source. With their supply running low, the Thundercats needed to find more, fast. Using his ingenuity, Panthro invented a Thundrillium detector, and each Thundercat set off in a different direction in search of a new source. Unaware that Monkian had been eavesdropping, he rushed to inform Slythe, setting the mutants on a mission to sabotage their efforts. Meanwhile, Lion-O encountered Willa, locked in battle with a Lizarthan, a monstrous reptile. Her arrows barely phased the beast, but Lion-O used his claw shield to reflect the sun's rays, scaring it away. Despite his help, Willa remained wary of the young Thundercat. Elsewhere, Tigra's detector led him into the Cave of Time, where he unknowingly aged rapidly. By the time he realized the danger, he was too frail to escape. Lion-O, attacked by mutants in the forest, was saved by Willa, who struck them down with sleep gas arrows. Using the Sword of Omen's sight beyond sight, Lion-O saw Tigra's predicament. Willa advised that only someone incredibly fast could retrieve him from the cave. Lion-O called for Chitara. Once at the cave, Chitara sprinted inside and carried Tigra out. The Thundercats were stunned to see him so aged. Willa then suggested the Geyser of Life, whose waters might restore him. However, The geyser was guarded by fierce, winged water snakes. Lion-O and Chitara distracted the creatures, allowing Tigra to immerse himself in the waters and regain his youth. With Tigra restored, the Thundercats and Willa stood together, knowing that, despite their differences, their fates on Third Earth were undeniably intertwined. Episode 8: The Tower of Traps. The Thunder Kittens, Wily Kit and Wily Cat, are mapping out the forest and surrounding regions when a sudden commotion grabs their attention. Following the noise, they stumble upon two stone gargoyles robbing an elderly wallow traveller. The twins leap into action, using their agility and combat skills to fend off the attackers. Though they manage to save the wallow, the gargoyles escape with his bag. Inside was a precious gold bracelet, adorned with two intertwined hearts, a wedding gift for his daughter. Heartbroken, the wallow explains that the gargoyles are minions of Baron Carnor, a notorious thief who dwells in the Black Tower. Determined to retrieve the stolen heirloom, Wily Kit and Wily Cat set off for the tower. However, upon arrival, they find no visible entrance. As they search for a way in, Wily Kit suddenly realises that Wily Cat has vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, at Cat's lair, Lion-O enjoys a rare moment of relaxation in a tranquil pool when the Sword of Omens warns him of the Thunder Kitten's danger. Without hesitation, he races to the Black Tower, where Wily Kit frantically tells him about her brother's disappearance. Together, they retrace Wily Cat's steps, only for a trapdoor to spring open beneath them, sending them tumbling inside. They call out for Wily Cat, who responds from a cage at the very top of the tower. Determined to rescue him, Lion-O and Wily Kit begin their perilous ascent, facing a series of deadly traps, an illusory staircase, a ravenous octopoid, an expanding chasm, laser-firing statues, and swinging blades. Through teamwork and skill, they overcome each obstacle and finally free Wily Cat. As they catch their breath, a door creaks open, and a chilling voice invites them in. Cautiously stepping forward, they find themselves in a treasure-laden chamber, where Baron Carnor's lifeless body still sits on his throne. The voice, merely a pre-recorded message, fades as the doors slam shut, trapping them inside. Hope seems lost until a small panel in the ceiling opens and one of the gargoyles drops the wallow's bracelet into the room. Seizing the opportunity, the trio climbs out through the opening, only to be ambushed by the reanimated gargoyles. Lion-O swiftly calls for reinforcements, and the Thundercats arrive, vanquishing the stone creatures. Victorious, they return in the Thunder Tank, making a final stop at the Wallow Village. The wedding celebrations are in full swing as Wily Kit and Wily Cat joyfully return the bracelet. The grateful Wallow presents it to his daughter, ensuring her special day is complete.
To Mum Ra's will at last, boy. Never.
Episode 9: The Garden of Delights. As tremors shake the land around Cat's lair, Panthro and Tigra analyse the readings, concluding that while unusual, the quakes pose no immediate threat. Still, Tigra decides to investigate firsthand, but no sooner does he step outside than a massive slimy worm erupts from the ground, lashing out. Tigra fights back with his bolo whip, but the creature ensnares him, dragging him underground. Following the worm's slick trail, Tigra stumbles upon the molemen, small, burrowing creatures who insist they aren't behind the tremors. Pressing forward, he finds himself in a lush, otherworldly paradise known as the Garden of Delights. There, a strange, human-faced plant named Silky greets him and offers a golden, melon-like fruit. Hesitant at first, Tigra takes a bite and is immediately overwhelmed by euphoria. The fruit is intoxicating, clouding his senses. So deep is his craving that he fails to notice Silky morphing into Mumra. The sorcerer promises him more of the addictive fruit if he brings him the Sword of Omens. Back at Cat's lair, Tigra stumbles in, disoriented, nearly getting run over by Panthro's Thunder Tank. Meanwhile, while clearing debris from the quakes, Wily Cat loses control of the tank, sending him and Panthro tumbling into a vast underground tunnel system. Lion-O and Chitara join them to explore the hidden labyrinth beneath their home. That night, Tigra, unable to resist his craving, sneaks into the lair, steals the Sword of Omens, and hands it over to Mumra in exchange for more fruit. Knowing he cannot wield the sword himself, Mumra captures Willa, hoping her pure spirit can unlock its power. But Willa, realizing his plan, feigns obedience. With the Thundercats imprisoned, Mumra believes victory is his. However, Tigra, secretly fighting his addiction, stops eating the fruit. Willa, seeing this, makes her move, freeing Lion-O and tossing him the sword. United, the Thundercats overpower the mutants. In a last-ditch effort, Mumra attacks, but Lion-O deflects his energy bolts with the claw shield, sending the sorcerer retreating back to his pyramid. The battle won. Tigra stands among his friends, free at last from the fruit's hold. Episode 10. Mandora, the Evil Chaser. As Lion-O and Snarf spent a quiet day taking a leisurely walk, they tumbled upon a massive metal container, its sides marked with the word danger in bold letters. As they approached, muffled noises echoed from within. Ignoring Snarf's worried protests, Lion-O pried the box open. The moment the latch clicked free, two figures burst out, vanishing into the tall grass before he could react. The third, a lanky, green, insect-like robot named Quick-Pick, lingered just long enough to help Lion-O and Snarf to their feet, only to snatch the Sword of Omens and Snarf's secret coin purse before darting off. Realization hit too late. Frantically, they searched, but the thief was gone. Before they could regroup, a sleek electrocharger zoomed onto the scene. At the controls sat Mandora, first-class officer of the Interplanetary Control Force. Furious, she informed Lion-O that the prisoners he'd just freed were among the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. That metal box? A temporary holding cell until they could be transported to the grey prison planet. Wasting no time, the three took off in pursuit. Their first target, Plutar, an alien whose touch was toxic, had already found an ally, the living ooze, a monstrous sentient sludge. When Mandora, Lion-O and Snarf arrived, the ooze ensnared them in its gelatinous grip. As Plutar prepared to strike, Mandora grabbed an enzyme catalyzer from her bike and fired. The ooze disintegrated instantly, and a second blast took down Plutar. With one criminal secured, they went after the second, Burnout, a massive tank-like robot. Lion-O intercepted him just as he was about to trample a deer. The ensuing battle was fierce, but with Mandora's well-aimed boomerang, Burnout was finally subdued. While Mandora tracked Quick-Pick, Lion-O and Snarf locked Burnout away, but by the time they returned, Mandora had been captured, along with Quick-Pick, by the Mudhogs, a band of underground dwellers. Lion-O's words convinced Quick-Pick to grab the Sword of Omens from the Mudhog King and toss it to him. With a mighty call, Lion-O summoned the Thundercats. Soon, the Thunder Tank's engine roared as it crashed into the Mudhog lair. Rather than attack, Panthro used the tank's high-powered headlights to blind the creatures, sending them fleeing into the darkness. Later, back at Cat's lair, the Thundercats recounted the day's events. Snarf, still mourning his missing purse, sighed dramatically until Panthro appeared, tossing it into his hands.
The flame!
Episode 11. The Ghost Warrior. One stormy night, two young Balkans huddle beneath a towering tree, shivering as thunder crashes overhead. Rain lashes down in torrents, soaking them to the bone. Suddenly, a jagged bolt of lightning struck, splitting the tree in two with a deafening crack. Beneath the smouldering roots, a hidden chamber is revealed. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a little greed, the Balkans venture inside, hoping to uncover lost treasures. Instead, they awaken something far worse. A deep, guttural laugh echoes through the chamber as the spirit of Groon the Destroyer rises from centuries of imprisonment. Once a fearsome warrior, Groon had long ago been sealed away for his crimes. Now, weakened but free, he craves power. He needs Thundrillium. His search brings him to Cat's lair, an imposing fortress that surprises him. Who dares lay claim to Third Earth in his absence? Slipping inside, he began absorbing the lair's Thundrillium stores, feeding his strength. Meanwhile, strange disturbances unsettle the Thundercats. Objects move on their own, shadows flicker unnaturally. Something is wrong. When Groon finally materializes, fully restored, he sneers at them. "We'll meet again," he promises, before vanishing into the night. The next day, chaos spreads across Third Earth. Groon storms through villages, toppling homes and terrifying the gentle Balkans, Walos and Burbles. He demands a long-forbidden substance, fire rocks. The desperate villagers plead for help, and the Thundercats listen. Tiger's eyes darkened as he realized fire rocks were just another name for thundranium, a material deadly even to them. Worse still, Groon now knows exactly where to find it. As the Thundercats struggle to uncover their foe's identity, Cheetara steps forward. Though dangerous, she invokes her sixth sense, revealing Gruner's past. Once a proud Thundercat and a brother in arms to Jaga, until his hunger for power consumed him. Now, he is back, wielding a Thundranium-forged battle club, intent on destruction. Groon attacks the lair, his strikes shaking its very foundations. Knowing this fight is beyond them, Lion-O summons Jaga's spirit. It's what Groon wanted all along, a rematch. They clash, spectral forces colliding. Groon gains the upper hand until Lion-O hurls Jaga the Sword of Omens. Empowered by Lion-O's strength, Jaga strikes a final blow, banishing Groon once more. Episode 12, The Doomgaze. Dark forces stir as Mum-Ra, ever scheming, calls upon Nemesis, the embodiment of darkness. The ancient force urges him to ally with Tashi, a powerful sorceress imprisoned in the Time Warp prison, whose Doomgaze can enthrall even the strongest of wills. But there's a price. Mum-Ra must free her. He agrees, but he alone knows the key. A tuft of cheetah's hair, a burble's tear, an enchanted unicorn's shoe, and a hero to take her place in the prison. Meanwhile, Lion-O and Panthro, training outside Cat's lair, spot an ominous dark cloud moving against the wind. The Sword of Omens reveals it to be a Man-O-War cloud, an airborne, jellyfish-like creature heading straight for the Burble village. Moments later, the creature snatches Robert Bell with its long tentacles. Knowing speed is their only hope, Cheetara races after it, marking trees as she goes. But her pursuit is cut short. Slythe's net ensnares her. Before she can break free, he snips a clump of her hair. Then, in a cruel twist, the Man-O-War cloud seizes him as well. Elsewhere, Lion-O and Snarf witness Jackalman stealing a unicorn's shoe, another piece of Mum-Ra's dark puzzle. With the Sword of Omens' vision confirming their worst fears, they set off for Mount Anguish. Lion-O and Snarf brave the treacherous crumbling cliffs of Vertigo, while Cheetara takes the faster route through the Phosphorus Desert. They arrive just as Mum-Ra begins the ritual. Lion-O summons the Thundercats, but before they can strike, Tashi ensnares him with her Doomgaze. Only Cheetara, immune to its spell, stands against the sorceress. She battles fiercely, sending Tashi back to her prison before taking on the mutants. When the remaining Thundercats arrive, they make short work of their foes. Outmatched, Mum-Ra flees, admitting defeat again. Episode 13, Lord of the Snows. Under the watchful eyes of the Thundercats, a meteor blazes through the sky, hurtling toward Third Earth. Inside Cat's lair, Panthro examines the celestial object through their tracking equipment, his sharp eyes widening. It's made entirely of Thundrillium, a precious remnant of their lost home, Thundera. With their own energy reserves nearly depleted, they attempt to pull it in with the lair's tracking beam, but the effort fails. The meteor crashes onto the icy peaks of Hook Mountain. Determined not to let this vital resource slip away, Lion-O sets off to retrieve it. Unbeknownst to him, Snarf, ever the loyal companion, follows in secret. When Lion-O inevitably spots him, he's frustrated at first, but ultimately relents, allowing Snarf to accompany him. Meanwhile, Jackalman, lurking in the shadows, spies on them and rushes back to Castle Plundar to inform Slythe. Seeing an opportunity, the mutants mobilize, boarding Vulture Man's flying machine and setting course for Hook Mountain, though Jackalman, ever the coward, chooses to stay behind. Back at the cat's lair, the remaining Thundercats sit in darkness, their power reserves drained. Panthro initially insists they wait for Lion-O's signal, but when Cheetara senses he may be in danger, they decide to act, roaring off in the Thunder Tank. Meanwhile, Lion-O and Snarf brave the mountain's brutal elements, howling winds, deadly avalanches, and sheer cliffs until they finally reach the summit. There, standing before the magnificent ice castle, is the imposing figure of the snowman atop his mighty feline companion, Snowmeow. When Lion-O offers friendship, the snowman scoffs and instead challenges him to battle. The The fight is fierce, with Lion-O struggling against the seasoned warrior. But when Jagger's spirit appears, offering guidance, Lion-O realizes Snow Meow is a cat like him. A single command halts the beast mid-charge, unintentionally sending Snowman tumbling into a deep chasm. Without hesitation, Lion-O rappels down to rescue him. Just then, the mutants attack, attempting to trap him below, but Snow Meow fights back, forcing them to retreat. With Snowman saved, he acknowledges Lion-O's bravery, granting him both his friendship and the meteor. As the Thundercats depart with their prize, they leave behind newfound allies and the promise of future camaraderie. Episode 14, The Spaceship Beneath the Sands. A wandering Tabot gets hijacked by the mutants, who steal his bag of money. As his panicked screams echoed through the trees, they drew the attention of Tigra and Chitara, who sprinted to the scene. But the mutants had planned for this. As soon as the Thundercats arrived, Monkeyan, hidden above, sprang his trap, a sticky net that ensnared them instantly. Their triumph was short-lived. Moments later, Lion-O and Panthro roared onto the battlefield in the Thunder Tank. With precise maneuvering, the tank's powerful jaws sliced through the net, freeing their comrades. Outmatched, the mutants had no choice but to flee back to Castle Plundar. Frustrated, they licked their wounds and brooded over their constant defeats. The Thundercats had managed to build advanced weapons from the wreckage of their flagship, while the mutants' own technology remained buried beneath the desert of sinking sands, trapped there by Mum-Ra. Desperate for an advantage, they sought out the ancient sorcerer. After much grovelling, Mum-Ra relented, raising their long-lost ship. With their arsenal restored, the mutants wasted no time launching an all-out assault on the cat's lair. Skycutters and the formidable Nosediver rained fire down on the fortress. Panthro and Lion-O took the Thunder Tank in pursuit of Slythe, who led them on a wild chase, straight off a cliff and into the ocean. While Slythe's vehicle adapted effortlessly to the water, the tank plummeted and wedged itself among the rocks. Panthro had stored 2 underwater breathing devices beneath their seats. They managed to escape, only to be met with Slythe's gunfire. Thinking quickly, they lured him into a cavern where a monstrous eel attacked, forcing Slythe to retreat with a damaged Nosediver. Emerging from the water, they barely had time to react before Jackalman and Monkeyan swooped in on their Skycutters. Lion-O summoned reinforcements before diving back into the ocean with Panthro. That's when they noticed 2 massive sea quines attacking the tank, unusual behaviour for the normally docile creatures. Then, they saw the cause. A baby sea quine trapped beneath the tank. Despite their combined efforts, the infant remained pinned. Then, Slythe returned. Thinking fast, Lion-O harpooned the Nosediver to the Thunder Tank. As Slythe attempted to flee, he not only damaged his vehicle further, but inadvertently freed both the tank and the baby sea quine. With the crisis averted, the 2 Thundercats piloted their tank back to shore. Episode 15, The Time Capsule. The Thunder Kittens zipped through the sky on their brand new spaceboards, laughter ringing in the air. Kit had already mastered the art, weaving effortlessly, while Cat struggled to keep his balance, wobbling as he tried to keep up. Back at Cat's lair, Panthro proudly unveiled his latest invention: voice-activated communicators, installed in Chitara's bow staff, Tigra's bolo whip, and his own nunchucks. The new tech ensured the Thundercats could stay in touch no matter where they were. Meanwhile, high atop Mount Anguish, Lion-O sat in silence, gazing at the horizon, lost in memories of Thundera. Jagger's spirit appears beside him, offering comfort. He spoke of the Time Capsule, an opto-crystal device that contained the entire recorded history of their lost planet. The Thundercats had brought it with them during their escape, but it had been lost when their flagship crashed on Third Earth. Determined, Lion-O shared the revelation with the others, and they immediately set out in search of it. Though instructed to stay behind, the Thunder Kittens, never ones to miss out on an adventure, snuck out soon after. Tigra's search led him underground to the Mole Men's mines, where he found the timid creatures digging frantically. Before he could speak, the towering Mole Master emerged, his whip cracking through the air. Unfazed, Tigra's powerful bolo whip sent the tyrant fleeing, but the frightened Mole Men refused to share any information. Lion-O's path took him to the River of Despair, where the deadly black widow shark lurked. Before he could figure out a way across, the female unicorn keeper arrived, conjuring a bridge of light with her crystal ball. Just as Lion-O and Snarf stepped onto it, the shark lunged, slamming into the structure. Lion-O's attempt to attack only further weakened the bridge, forcing them to rush across before it collapsed. Cheetara faced a massive sea serpent in a swamp, but with her incredible speed, she easily outmaneuvered the beast. Panthro, meanwhile, encountered the ill-tempered crabman on a beach. When the creature snapped his nunchucks in half, he wisely retreated in the thunder tank. The Thunder Kittens weren't as lucky. They narrowly escaped the Black Widow shark, but not before it destroyed one of their spaceboards, leaving them with only one. Finally, Lion-O and Snarf spotted a glowing object inside a nearby cave. The time capsule, but the cave had a guardian, a towering savage caveman who had claimed the artifact as his own. Unable to speak, he gestured a challenge, an arm wrestling match for the capsule. Despite the odds, Lion-O accepted. The battle was fierce, but with sheer determination, he triumphed. As the other Thundercats arrived, they helped load the capsule into the thunder tank and headed home, one step closer to preserving the legacy of Thunderer.
Come on! Charge!
Episode 16, The Fireballs of Plun-Darr. Tigra's heart pounded as he surveyed the devastation around the treetop kingdom. The once lush canopy was now scorched, the air thick with the acrid scent of burnt wood. Urgency propelled him forward, and soon he encountered Willa, the warrior maiden's leader, who confirmed his worst fears. Before she could explain further, a sky cutter swooped in overhead, its engines roaring. At the controls was Monkeyan, his wild laughter echoing through the trees as he opened fire. Tigra reacted instantly, dodging the blast and leaping onto the sky cutter. In one swift motion, he yanked Monkeyan from the cockpit, sending the simian mutant crashing into the underbrush. Monkeyan's attack only reinforced Tigra's suspicion that the mutants were behind the destruction. Wasting no time, he and Willa set off for Castle Plun-Darr. Upon arrival, Tigra activated his invisibility and slipped into the fortress through the moat, only to realize too late that the water had been treated with phospho-R, a chemical that made him glow. Exposed, he barely had time to react before Slythe piloted the nosediver straight at him, its spinning blades churning the water. Tigra managed to evade the deadly grinder, disabling the vehicle in the process, but his victory was short-lived. The mutants had set a trap, and he found himself ensnared in a cage within the intake pipe. Bound to the four winds, an ancient torture device designed to tear its victim apart, Tigra could do nothing as Slythe fixed a solar mirror to the controls, ensuring the mechanism would activate with the rising sun. Back at the cat's lair, Lion-O grew anxious over Tigra's absence. The Sword of Omens confirmed his fears, showing him his friend's peril. Without hesitation, he sprinted to Castle Plun-Darr. Willa met him there, but when he reached for his claw shield to scale the walls, he realized he'd left it behind. Luckily, Willa had a solution: her giant treetop spider, Bushy. The furry arachnid scaled the walls in moments, leaving behind a strong web strand for them to climb. Inside, they reached Tigra just as the Four Winds was about to activate. The trio fled, pursued by mutants, and barricaded themselves inside a chamber, only to discover the fireball launcher within. As Slythe and Monkeyan began melting the door with a flamethrower, Lion-O summoned the other Thundercats. They arrived in the thunder tank and fired cable pulleys into the room. Just as the trio escaped, the flamethrower ignited the fuel, triggering a massive explosion that obliterated the fireball launcher and engulfed much of Castle Plun-Darr in flames. From the safety of the thunder tank, the Thundercats and Willa watched the fortress burn, knowing the mutants had once again been dealt a heavy blow.
Come and get your sacred sword. Here.
Episode 17, All That Glitters. Panthro and Tigra worked tirelessly, extracting Thundrillium from the massive meteor Lion-O had brought back from Hook Mountain. The smelting process removed impurities, the most abundant of which was gold. Panthro scoffed at the brittle, chemically inert metal, dismissing it as worthless and tossing it into the bottomless chasm. Cheetara, however, was mesmerized by its shimmering beauty, forging a simple necklace from a nugget before it was all discarded. Meanwhile, Lion-O and Snarf ventured to the caves of the trolls and giants on a scouting mission. They marveled at the sight of a towering giant before being startled by a troll riding a giant grasshopper. The troll, Grigory Grigion, was quick-witted and full of humor, immediately earning Lion-O's favor. However, the mood turned grim when Grigory confessed his fear of the Shadow Robber, a mysterious entity lurking in the midnight woods, preying on travelers like himself. Determined to protect the innocent, Lion-O and Snarf vowed to escort him safely through the forest. As they entered the midnight woods, the darkness was absolute, pressing in like a living entity. Suddenly, a shadowy figure lunged at Lion-O, striking with a whip. Lion-O retaliated, drawing the Sword of Omens, only for its blade to shatter upon impact. The flash of sparks illuminated his attacker's face, Tigra. Both warriors froze in shock as Grigory morphed into Mumra, cackling as he disappeared into the night. Realizing they had been tricked, Lion-O and Tigra turned their attention to the broken Sword of Omens. Jagger's ghostly form appeared, revealing that by raising his sword against a fellow Thundercat, Lion-O had incurred the curse of Balthaz, causing the blade to break. The only place hot enough to reforge it was the core of a nearby volcano, where a fallen dwarf star had once burned, but no living being could withstand the heat. Determined to restore the sword, Lion-O raced toward the volcano, ignoring Tigra and Snarf's desperate pleas. Knowing he might never return, he appointed Tigra as the new lord of the Thundercats, and bid Snarf a solemn farewell before ascending the treacherous terrain. Unable to stop him, Tigra and Snarf hurried back to the cat's lair for reinforcements. The Thundercats soon arrived at the volcano in the Thunder Tank, bringing Robear Bill, who spoke of the Inflamer, a being immune to the molten heat. Hope swelled, but upon finding the Inflamer, they were met with disappointment. The Guardian was weakened, having exhausted his power fighting the mutants earlier that day. Noticing Chitara's gold necklace, he revealed that the gold could restore his strength. Panthro and Chitara rushed back to the lair, salvaging what little gold she had kept. Panthro melted it using the Thunder Tank's flames, creating a pool of molten metal. The Inflamer crawled forward and disappeared into the liquid gold. The Thundercats watched in horror, believing they had doomed him. With no other choice, they pressed on, using Lion-O's locator signal to tunnel through the volcano's core and retrieve him. As they reached the heart of the volcano, the Inflamer, fully restored, emerged from the molten gold, holding the reforged Sword of Omens. But instead of gratitude, he turned on them, hurling giant fireballs. As flames rained down, Lion-O commanded the sword to return to him. The weapon burst free from the Inflamer's grasp and flew into Lion-O's waiting hands. Enraged, the Inflamer plunged into the volcano, triggering a violent eruption. With seconds to spare, the Thundercats leaped into the Thunder Tank and sped away as the mountain exploded behind them. The Sword of Omens was whole again, but the cost of its reforging would not be easily forgotten. Episode 18, Spitting Image. Mumra, ever scheming to destroy the Thundercats, enlists the help of the Driller, a ruthless robotic mercenary. Paying him in diamonds, Mumra orders him to abduct Panthro. The Driller tunnels his way to Cat's lair, emerging in Panthro's room as he sleeps. As he attempts to drug him with the sands of sleep, Panthro wakes and hurls him across the room, but the Driller retaliates, shattering the bottle and filling the air with the sleep-inducing fumes. Overcome, Panthro collapses, and the Driller drags him away. At the Black Pyramid, Mumra hands over the rest of the diamonds, then turns to his true plan. Using a cloning machine, he creates an exact replica of Panthro, but with a sinister twist. Summoning the spirit of Hammerhand, a long-dead berserker, Mumra forces the ghost to possess the clone's body. Now under Mumra's control, the false Panthro sets out to wreak havoc across Third Earth. Meanwhile, Mumra, transformed into his ever-living form, flies over the bottomless chasm with the real Panthro in tow. Before Panthro can fully grasp his situation, Mumra hurls him into the depths, confident that he's rid of him. But Panthro lands on a narrow ledge and, using his shoulder spikes, begins a perilous climb, narrowly avoiding deadly cosmic rays bursting from the chasm's depths. Back at Cat's lair, Lion-O learns of Panthro's fate through the Sword of Omens, but before he can act, Chitara reports another crisis. The Burbles fruit fields are ablaze. As she and Tigra rush to help, Lion-O speeds toward the chasm in the Thunder Tank, arriving just as Panthro pulls himself over the edge. But their relief is short-lived. News soon reaches them that Panthro has been seen destroying Wallow Village, confused and angered. Panthro denies any wrongdoing, but when Lion-O arrives, he sees Panthro laying waste to the village. Before the truth can be sorted out, the real Panthro arrives, charging at his doppelganger. The two battle furiously, their fight drawing dangerously close to the raging fires. At Snarf's suggestion, Lion-O unleashes the Sword of Omens, revealing the imposter. Burned and weakened, the clone flees back to the Black Pyramid, cursing Mum-Ra for not granting him enough power. But Mum-Ra is unmoved. With the real Panthro still alive, he declares the clone useless. Enraged, the fake Panthro smashes the mold that created him, reverting to his true form, Hammerhand, before vanishing into the night.
We need the Thundercats, Snarf.
Episode 19, Mongor. Within the Black Pyramid, Mum-Ra watches intently as swirling visions form in the waters of his cauldron. The image is chilling, a towering goat-like demon with burning eyes and an aura of pure terror. Mongor, a creature that feeds on fear, growing stronger with every ounce of it. Mum-Ra knows Mongor would be a formidable opponent for the Thundercats, perhaps even their undoing. But there's a problem. The demon remains trapped in a tomb, its location unknown even to him. Meanwhile, back at the cat's lair, Tigra and Chitara struggle to make sense of the sudden tremors shaking Third Earth. Their scanners pick up nothing. An invisible force field is blocking all readings. Out in the Thunder Tank, Lion-O, Panthro, and Snarf encounter the same mysterious interference. By the time they return to the lair, the tremors have stopped, but Tigra warns them, whatever is happening, it's only getting stronger. Then the truth comes out. WilyKit and WilyCat confess. They're the reason behind the disturbances. At first, the others laugh, but the twins' serious expressions wipe the amusement from their faces. Earlier that day, while exploring, they had stumbled upon a ruined temple and found a massive six-sided stone marked with runic symbols. Curious, they moved it, accidentally freeing a terrifying creature from the tomb beneath. The Thundercats are furious. Their reckless actions have unleashed an unknown threat, but Snarf intervenes, reminding them that scolding the twins won't help. It'll only make them too afraid to ask for help in the future. The team realizes their mistake, but before they can reconcile, they notice the twins are gone. WilyKit and WilyCat have slipped away, likely to fix their mistake themselves. As the Thundercats split up to search for them, Mongor strikes. One by one, he overpowers them, binding Tigra in his own whip, trapping Chitara in a net, flipping the Thunder Tank, and restraining Panthro. The demon grows stronger, feeding on their fear. At the ruined temple, WilyKit and WilyCat study the runes, desperate for a solution. Then they find it. The only way to defeat Mongor is to refuse to look at him directly. By the time they reach the battlefield, Mongor has grown massive, locked in a brutal fight with Lion-O. Though skilled and fearless, the young lord is outmatched, but the twins act fast. Using one of their trick pellets, they send a burst of bubbles into the air, distracting Mongor just long enough. Lion-O turns his back, using the reflection in his claw shield to aim his attack. A powerful beam from the Sword of Omens slams into Mongor, weakening him. A few more strikes shrink him back to his original form. Defeated, the demon retreats, vanishing into his tomb once more. As the dust settles, the Thundercats regroup, shaken but victorious, and this time they all agree. Recklessness can be dangerous, but courage and quick thinking can turn even the gravest mistake into a triumph.
Thundercats!
Episode 20, Return to Thundera. Another day, another scheme begins. The mutants summon Mum-Ra to Castle Plundar for a demonstration. Inside the fortress, Slythe, eager to impress, presses a few buttons on a remote control. Massive doors creak open, revealing their latest weapon, the Warbot, a towering machine of destruction, the pinnacle of Plundarian science. Mum-Ra, unimpressed, questions its capabilities. With a sly grin, Slythe taps another button, and the Warbot fires a blast at a sleeping frog dog, instantly turning it to stone. With that, he commands the Warbot to march toward Cat's lair. Unaware of the impending danger, the Thundercats gather around the time capsule they recently retrieved. When Panthro activates it, a vivid hologram of Thundera before its destruction fills the room, mesmerizing them. Later that night, while the others sleep, Lion-O switches it on again. Standing too close to the projection, he is suddenly transported back in time. Thundera, just one day before its fall. As the Warbot approaches Cat's lair, alarms blare. The Thundercats scramble to the control room and are horrified by the sight of the mechanical behemoth. Panthro unleashes everything the fortress has: lasers, missiles, fire, ice. But the Warbot shrugs it all off. Meanwhile, in the past, Lion-O encounters his old pet, Kano, who leads him to his father, Cloudus, who is now blind and under attack by Slythe and Vultureman. Lion-O drives them off with the Sword of Omens, and Cloudus entrusts him with the Warbot schematics, the very secret the mutants were after. Though Lion-O pleads with his father to flee, Cloudus refuses, staying behind to ensure the Thundercats escape to Third Earth. In the present, the Warbot rips the head off Cat's lair and petrifies the Thundercats. Just then, Lion-O returns. With the Sword of Omens, he revives his friends and turns the tide. Armed with his father's knowledge, he targets the Warbot's weak spot, a small red disc under its foot. As the Warbot moves to crush him, Lion-O strikes. The Warbot explodes, ending the mutant's latest attack. Episode 21, Dr. Dome Tone. It was a somber day on Third Earth when Wily Kit and Wily Cat decided to go for a swim in the ocean. The twins splashed and played in the waves, enjoying the sunshine, until a colossal frog-like robot erupted from beneath the water and swallowed Wily Kit whole. Before Wily Cat could react, the mechanical beast turned its glowing eyes on him. Thinking fast, the young Thundercat leaped onto a nearby unicorn and raced back to Cat's lair. Breathless and panicked, Wily Cat relayed everything to Lion-O, who wasted no time in setting out to rescue his friend. They tracked the mechanical frog to the forest, bracing for a fight, only to find Wily Kit unharmed. The massive robot, called Hercules, was actually under the control of Dr. Dome Tone, a friendly scientist who had been on his way to meet the Thundercats. Back at the lair, Dr. Dome Tone explained his urgent mission. He was the director and guardian of the Great Oceanic Plug, a massive structure sealing a dangerous fissure on the ocean floor. Without it, the waters of Third Earth would drain into the planet's core, extinguishing its fire and triggering a catastrophic disaster. But now, the plug was under threat. Scrape, a ruthless alien from the planet Blue Plunder, sought to drain Third Earth's oceans to extract a common rock used as fuel on his homeworld. Scrape's first attack had already destroyed Samson, another robotic guardian. With only Hercules and a small crew remaining, Dr. Dome Tone was outmatched. He pleaded for the Thundercats' help, and they quickly agreed. While Lion-O, Wily Kit, and Wily Cat joined Dr. Dome Tone aboard Hercules, the others stayed behind to build an emergency rig. Meanwhile, at the plug, Dr. Dome Tone's crew faced another crisis. Their food supplies were nearly gone. One crewman ventured out in a small sub to search for rations, but was ambushed by Scrape's giant electric eel spaceship. Scrape then turned his wrath on the plug, ramming into it with devastating force. Just then, Hercules arrived, and Lion-O and Willy Cat donned shark suits, armed with neutralizing grounding cables. As Scrape wrapped his eel around Hercules, preparing to electrocute it, Lion-O threw the grounding cable, neutralizing the attack. Enraged, but not defeated, Scrape abandoned his eel and seized Wily Cat, making a dash for the plug's control panel. As Lion-O called for backup using the Sword of Omens, Scrape forced the plug open. Water surged toward the fissure until Panthro, Tigra, and Chitara arrived in the Thunder Tank, sealing the breach with a compressed air bubble just in time. With Scrape's plan foiled, the Thundercats used the Thunder Tank's vacuum suction to capture him, ensuring he would be handed over to Mandora for incarceration on the Grey Penal Planet. The ocean was safe once more, thanks to the Thundercats' courage and teamwork. Episode 22, The Astral Prison. Lion-O slept soundly in his chamber inside Cat's lair when the Sword of Omens suddenly stirred, growling with urgency. Jolted awake, he invoked Sight Beyond Sight and saw a grim vision. Jaga, trapped in the astral world by a sinister being named Nemex. Intent on extracting Jaga's vast wisdom, Nemex planned to imprison him for eternity. Alarmed, Lion-O gathered the Thundercats and shared what he had seen. They agreed to seek help from the only one on Third Earth who understood the astral world, the mysterious Nether Witch. Unbeknownst to them, the Nether Witch was none other than Mum-Ra in disguise. The team arrived at the Thunder Tank, but Lion-O insisted he must face this challenge alone. The others, albeit reluctant, returned to the lair. Determined, Lion-O ventured toward the pit of the Nether Witch, crossing the treacherous bridge of slime over the river of despair. His presence, however, did not go unnoticed. A monstrous two-headed Garak lunged at him. Relying on agility and quick reflexes, Lion-O evaded the beast and pressed forward. Meanwhile, in Castle Plundar, the mutants finalized Vultureman's deadly Thundranium cannon. Learning of Lion-O's absence from Mum-Ra, they seized the opportunity to attack Cat's lair, launching an assault with sky cutters, nosedivers, and the powerful cannon. Deep inside the pit, Lion-O wandered through eerie apparitions and phantoms before finally confronting the Nether Witch. He pleaded to be sent to the astral world. The sorceress warned it was a one-way journey. Resolute, Lion-O agreed. As the spell took effect, the Nether Witch revealed her true form, Mum-Ra, triumphant in his deception. In the astral world, Lion-O located Jaga's crystalline prison, scaling its walls with his claw line. A monstrous, blue-skinned, red-winged creature surged from the moat, narrowly missing him. Fending it off with the Sword of Omens, Lion-O pressed on. Just as he reached Jaga, Nemex appeared, growing into a giant and unleashing beams of energy. Lion-O countered with his sword, overwhelming Nemex. As they fled, they encountered Brodo, a long-imprisoned wizard whom they freed. Jaga was overjoyed but devastated when Lion-O admitted he had no way home. Just then, the sword's vision revealed Cat's lair under siege. The mutants' Thundranium fumes had weakened the Thundercats, leaving them defenseless. Despair turned to hope when Brodo used his magic to send Lion-O back. Materializing outside the lair, Lion-O struck down the Thundranium cannon with a single decisive slash. The Thundercats, heartened by their leader's return, rallied and swiftly drove the mutants away. Episode 23, The Crystal Queen. One crisp, moonlit night, a bright object streaks across the sky, catching the attention of Lion-O and Panthro as they drive through the wilderness in the Thunder Tank. Intrigued, they attempt to pursue it, but without warning, the tank sputters and stalls. Panthro frowns, checking the controls, and quickly diagnoses the problem. The Thundrillium module is depleted. Snarf, who had been tasked with recharging it, had clearly dropped the ball. With no other choice, Panthro sets off for the cat's lair to retrieve a spare module, leaving Lion-O to stand guard by the tank. Back at the lair, the Thundercats are enjoying dinner when Panthro bursts in to grab the replacement. Despite his assurances that Lion-O is fine and they'll be back soon, Snarf's gut tells him otherwise. Unable to shake his concern, he secretly follows Panthro as he speeds off into the night. Meanwhile, alone in the quiet, Lion-O hears an enchanting melody drifting through the air. Drawn to the sound, he follows it to the nearby Burble village, where he finds the robotic bear-like creatures gathered in awe around a stunning iridescent bird. The Arietta bird. Robert Bill explains that the bird's mesmerizing song helps ripen their Burble fruits, ensuring a bountiful harvest. When Lion-O asks about the creature, Robert Bill solemnly reveals that it may be the last of its kind. Before Lion-O can respond, the night is torn apart by a familiar streak of light. The flying jet sleigh of Queen Tartara, ruler of the Crystal Kingdom, descends upon the village. With a flash, one of her guards snatches the Arietta bird. As the sleigh soars away, Lion-O leaps and grabs hold, vanishing into the night. Panthro returns to find Lion-O missing and races to the Burble village, where Robert Bill relays the shocking events. Determined to rescue Lion-O, Panthro speeds toward the Crystal Kingdom, unaware that Snarf has secretly stowed away. When he finally notices his furry companion, He orders Snarf to stay put, but the determined creature spots Lion-O's footprints in the snow and rushes off. Infiltrating the palace, Lion-O disguises himself as a guard and sneaks into the treasure room where the Arietta bird is caged. But before he can act, Queen Tartara arrives, eyes gleaming. With a swift motion, she unleashes an icy blast, trapping Lion-O in a massive crystal. Snarf, tracking Lion-O's footprints, stumbles into the room and, after several failed attempts to break the crystal, has an idea. He urges the Arietta bird to sing. As the piercing melody fills the air, the crystal shatters, freeing Lion-O. Seizing his moment, he calls the other Thundercats with the Sword of Omens. Moments later, Panthro arrives in a thunderous crash, ploughing through the palace walls in the thunder tank. As the structure begins to collapse, the Arietta bird takes flight, escaping into the night. Lion-O, Snarf, and Panthro make a daring escape, speeding away as the Crystal Kingdom crumbles behind them. Episode 24. Safari Joe. A massive spaceship descends into a forest clearing on a silent night. It belongs to Safari Joe, the galaxy's most infamous big game hunter. Having conquered Aquacats, Big Cats, and Sky Cats, he now sets his sights on a new challenge, hunting the Thundercats. His only companion, a robotic assistant named Mule, handles his equipment and gathers intel on their prey using the holojector. Unaware of the looming danger, the Thunder Kittens, Wily Kit and Wily Cat are enjoying a carefree day, surfing through the air on their spaceboards. Wily Kit rides with ease, but Wily Cat struggles to stay balanced. Their fun is cut short when Safari Joe suddenly emerges from the underbrush, blasting their boards into pieces. The twins plunge into a giant sack he had prepared, captured before they can react. Back at Cat's lair, Lion-O and Snarf's game of Kick the Bucket is interrupted by Chitara, who reports a troubling disturbance. Panthro attempts to scan the area, but finds nothing thanks to an electronic blind, a cloaking device concealing Safari Joe's ship and camp. Even the Sword of Omens cannot penetrate the barrier. Determined to investigate, Tigra and Chitara set out into the forest. Meanwhile, Safari Joe locks the Thunder Kittens in Thundranium cages. He consults Mule and the holojector, which reveals details about his next targets, Tigra and Chitara. When they arrive, Joe swiftly takes them down. Chitara is trapped in floating rocket-powered cuffs, while Tigra is caught in a water-filled pit. Both are quickly imprisoned alongside the twins. Panthro soon arrives in the thunder tank, only to be met with a hail of gunfire. Forced to fight on foot, he brandishes his nunchucks, but Joe exploits his deepest fear, unleashing a massive energy bat. Frozen with terror, Panthro is easily captured. With only Lion-O left, Safari Joe prepares for his toughest hunt. But when the holojector attempts to analyze the eye of Thundera, it explodes. Undeterred, Joe ambushes Lion-O outside the cat's lair. Despite his arsenal of weapons, Lion-O counters every attack. Desperate, Joe challenges him to fight without the Sword of Omens. Lion-O agrees, but Joe immediately breaks his word and attacks. However, with Snarf's help, Lion-O outmaneuvers and overpowers him. In the end, the Thundercats show mercy, allowing Safari Joe to leave under one condition: he must give up hunting forever. To ensure he keeps his word, Panthro reprograms Mule. With no other choice, Safari Joe and his robotic assistant depart, their hunting days over for good. Episode 25. Snarf takes up the challenge. On another fine day, as Snarf returned to Cat's lair, he was met with an eerie silence. The place was completely deserted. He searched every room, calling out for the Thundercats, but there was no answer. Just as he reached the main control room, he was startled to find Robert Bill already there, looking just as confused. Before they could make sense of things, the female unicorn keeper arrived with disturbing news. The Thundercats had been captured by the mutants. She explained how, earlier that day, the mutants had stormed the forest, driving the unicorns into the Forest of Silence. Her husband, the male unicorn keeper, sought the Thundercats' help to find the missing unicorns. Naturally, the cats agreed and split up to cover more ground. But what they didn't realize was that the mutants had set traps for them. Lion-O was the first to fall, tricked into piloting an unguarded nosediver that shackled him and took off. Tigra was ensnared in a maze of light. Panthro was locked inside a giant crystal chamber, and Wily Kit and Wily Cat were trapped by Vultureman's powerful tractor beam. Chitara was lured by a fake hologram of the Thundercats signal and captured. Determined to rescue his friends, Snarf, encouraged by Robert Bill, sprang into action. He summoned a giant bat to fly him to Castle Plundar, where he overheard the mutants boasting that the Thundercats were imprisoned in Mum-Ra's pyramid. Undeterred, Snarf infiltrated the pyramid, instructing a spider to weave a web around Mum-Ra's sarcophagus, trapping the ancient mummy. He then called upon a diamond-beaked woodpecker to peck a hole through the wall, allowing him to reach and pull the lever that opened the main door. Inside, Snarf was horrified to find his friends mummified. He tore the bandages from Lion-O and handed him the Sword of Omens. Lion-O freed the others just as Mum-Ra, breaking free from the web, emerged in his ever-living form. A fierce battle ensued, but Lion-O used his sword's reflective blade to show Mum-Ra his own ghastly image. Overcome with horror, Mum-Ra fled back to his sarcophagus. The Thundercats, grateful and victorious, cheered for Snarf before heading home, knowing they owed their freedom to their bravest friend. Episode 26, Sixth Sense. A visibly damaged and struggling spaceship drifts toward Third Earth. As it enters the planet's atmosphere, it sends out a telepathic distress call that latches onto Chitara's sixth sense with an unbreakable grip. Out in the woods with Lion-O, she is suddenly overcome with violent convulsions, her body racked with the ship's pain. She gasps, her voice no longer her own, speaking the ship's thoughts aloud. Alarmed, Lion-O wastes no time. He raises the Sword of Omens and signals the Thundercats for help. Unbeknownst to them, the mutants have also detected the ship's signals. Slythe orders Monkian to investigate, and the Simian warrior stealthily follows the Thundercats' beacon. What he discovers shocks him. Chitara is connected to the alien vessel, and its influence is draining her strength. Wasting no time, Monkian rushes back to Castle Plundar with the news. Seizing the opportunity, Vultureman tracks the ship's crash site to the icy peaks of Hook Mountain. Determined to claim whatever power it holds, the mutants race toward it. Meanwhile, at Cat's lair, Chitara's condition worsens. The Thunder Kittens manage to pinpoint the ship's last transmission, Hook Mountain. Realizing the vessel is their only hope of saving her, the Thundercats set off in the Thunder Tank, leaving Wily Kit, Wily Cat and Snarf to care for Chitara. By the time the Thundercats arrive, the mutants have already engaged with the ship's automated defenses. Frustrated by its resistance, Monkian attempts to smash it, only for Vultureman to stop him at the last second. Instead, they rip out the ship's control unit and escape back to Castle Plundar. When the Thundercats finally reach the wreckage, they realize the mutants have beaten them to it. They retrieve what remains of the ship and return to the lair, where Panthro and Tigra work urgently to repair it. With time running out, Lion-O and the Thunder Kittens infiltrate the mutants' fortress, searching for the stolen control unit. A tense game of cat and mouse unfolds inside Castle Plundar, but the Thundercats hold their own. Soon, Panthro, Tigra, and a weakened but determined Chitara arrive, tipping the scales. With her psychic bond, Chitara seizes control of the ship's defenses, forcing the mutants to retreat. With the control unit recovered and reinstalled, the ship releases its hold on Chitara. She exhaled in relief as the vessel, restored and free, ascended into the heavens, disappearing into the stars.
Thundercat will not draw! Then you are right, young lord.
Episode 27, The Thunder Cutter. A frustrated Mum-Ra rages within the depths of his black pyramid over the mutants' constant string of failures. The mutants cower before him, blaming their defeats on the Sword of Omens, a weapon of unrivaled power. Determined to counter it, Mum-Ra summons an ancient warrior, Hachiman, a noble samurai bound by the code of Bushido. The swordsman wields Thundercutter, a blade of legendary strength. Despite his honorable nature, Hachiman falls victim to Mum-Ra's deception and is led to believe the Thundercats are evil. With righteous fury, he sets out to challenge their leader, Lion-O. Meanwhile, In Cat's Lair, the Thundercats are in high spirits as they unveil their latest invention to Nader, a mutant attack warning system designed by Panthro. This device will alert the warrior maidens of approaching enemies, giving them time to prepare. Lion-O and Nader embark on a journey to the Treetop Kingdom, carrying the system with them. To save time, Nader suggests an alternate route, the perilous 4-day drop. Upon reaching the chasm, Lion-O learns the origin of its name. Should someone fall, they would plummet for 4 days before hitting the bottom. As he cautiously crosses a narrow log spanning the abyss, he encounters Hachiman coming from the opposite side. Neither warrior yields, leading to an escalating contest of pride. They take turns slicing the log with their swords until it inevitably snaps. As they plummet, Nader swiftly rescues them, pulling them to safety. The absurdity of the situation sparks laughter, but when Hachiman realizes Lion-O's identity, his mission resumes. He challenges Lion-O to a duel, but when they attempt to draw their swords, neither blade responds. Recognizing the duel as dishonorable, they understand they have been manipulated. Hachiman, realizing Mum-Ra's deceit, reconciles with Lion-O and fells a tree with one strike to replace the broken bridge. Their camaraderie is soon tested when Slythe and Monkeyan ambush them aboard the Skycutter. Working together, Lion-O, Hachiman and Nader bring the craft down. Monkeyan flees, but Slythe, pinned beneath the wreckage, is captured and taken to the Treetop Kingdom. Refusing to accept defeat, Mum-Ra summons another ancient warrior, a stealthy ninja. Disguised as Gumlar the Tabut, the ninja infiltrates the kingdom under the guise of a hostage negotiator. Under the cover of night, he reveals his true intent, seizing Nader as leverage against Hachiman, while the mutants launch a full-scale assault. The battle rages until Lion-O summons the Thundercats, and the arrival of the Thunder Tank turns the tide, forcing the villains to flee. With the kingdom safe and their bonds of friendship strengthened, Hachiman bids Lion-O farewell and strides off into the sunset, his honor restored.
Now for a taste of your own medicine!
Episode 28. The Wolf Rat. Inside his ominous black pyramid, the cunning Vultureman unveils his latest invention to Mum-Ra, a sleek, cat-sized infiltration robot called the Wolf Rat. Intrigued by its potential, Mum-Ra arms the machine with a potent miniaturization gas and sends it on a mission to the cat's lair. The Wolf Rat proves to be a marvel of deception, slipping past the lair's scan vision and even evading the Sword of Omen's sight beyond sight. Once inside, it releases the gas into the ventilation shafts, and the Thundercats shrink down to mere inches. Before they can make sense of their predicament, the Wolf Rat strikes with laser fire, forcing them to scatter. Tigra races to formulate an antidote, while Lion-O struggles to wield the now massive Sword of Omens. Peering through its hilt, he sees the mutants gathering outside, ready to attack. Meanwhile, Snarf returns from a candy fruit run, oblivious to the chaos. The moment he steps inside, the Wolf Rat targets him with its lasers. Dodging frantically, he stumbles upon the tiny Thundercats, who quickly devise a plan. Panthro assembled a makeshift suit of armor for Snarf, shielding him from the robot's blasts. Together, they ambush the Wolf Rat and manage to destroy it. But the danger isn't over. The mutants breach the lair, expecting an easy victory against the miniaturized heroes. Just in time, Tigra administers the antidote, restoring the team to full size. In the confusion, Snarf gets an extra dose and balloons into a towering giant. Seizing the opportunity, he effortlessly sends the mutants running. As the dust settles, Tigra reassures Snarf that the effects are temporary. Moments later, he shrinks back to his usual size, just in time to grumble about the whole ordeal. Episode 29. Feliner Part 1. The episode opens with reinforcements brought in by the Vultureman, who happens to be very fed up with the mutants. He reaches out to the ruthless Rataro, who arrives in his formidable warship, the Rat Star. Seizing an opportunity to strike, the two mutants fly to the planet of Snarfs, kidnapping the young and unsuspecting Snarfer. Upon their return to Third Earth, Rataro wastes no time asserting his dominance. He seizes control of the mutants from Slythe and sets a cunning trap, using Snarfer as bait to lure the Thundercats into an ambush. Desperate to escape, Snarfer races toward Cat's lair as fast as his little legs can carry him. When he finally arrives, he's greeted by his Uncle Osbert, better known as Snarf, and the rest of the Thundercats. After a joyful reunion, Snarfer reveals a startling truth. He and a group of Snarfs survived Thunderer's destruction by escaping in an old mutant space tanker. But before he can finish his story, Rataro's sinister plan takes effect. Using the hypnotic power of his rat's eyes, he compels Snarfer to return to Castle Plundar. Determined to save him, the Thundercats set out in the Thunder Tank, leaving the Thunder Kittens behind to guard the lair. But as they approach, Rataro unleashes his assault. A signal scrambler in the Rat Star blocks their communications, even blinding Lion-O's Sword of Omens. Then, with his devastating Varricannon and molecular mutator, he transforms ordinary rocks into a towering rock giant. As the Thundercats struggle against the monstrous foe, the Rat Star's void charges critically damage the Thunder Tank. In the end, it takes a powerful energy blast from the Sword of Omens to bring the Rat Star crashing down. The Thundercats storm Castle Plundar, rescuing Snarfer just in time. Back at Cat's lair, Panthro and the team work tirelessly on the Feliner, their first interstellar ship. But one crucial piece is missing: the hyperspace mega condenser. Just as frustration sets in, Snarf suggests salvaging the part from the wreckage of the Rat Star, lifting Panthro's spirits with a much-needed solution.
Living!
Episode 30, Feliner, Part 2. This episode picks up where the last left, with the mutants escaping from the wreckage of their crashed spaceship, the Rat Star. Slythe wastes no time blaming Rataro for their humiliating defeat at the hands of the Thundercats. But Rataro won't tolerate insubordination. A quick demonstration of his deadly rat's eyes daggers is enough to shut Slythe up. Regrouping under Rataro's command, the mutants cobble together a makeshift transport, the Mutank, and haul the wreckage back to Castle Plundar. Meanwhile, the Thundercats prepare for a crucial mission, retrieving the hyperspace mega condenser from the Rat Star before the mutants can get their hands on it. As they set out, Snarf confides in his nephew Snarfer that he's considering leaving Third Earth to return with him to the planet of the Snarfs. Unbeknownst to both sides, Mum-Ra has been watching from his Black Pyramid. Scheming, he sees the mega condenser as the perfect bait to lure the Thundercats into a trap. When the Thundercats reach Castle Plundar, they're met with immediate resistance. The mutants, piloting their newly assembled Mutank, engage the Thunder Tank in a fierce battle. While the machines clash, Lion-O slips into the wreckage of the Rat Star, only to find Mum-Ra waiting for him with the mega condenser in hand. After a brief but intense struggle, Lion-O forces the evil sorcerer to drop the device and retreat. Before he can celebrate, Rataro steps in for a final confrontation, but Lion-O emerges victorious once again. With their prize secured, the Thundercats return to Cat's lair. As Panthro, Chitara, Wily Kit, and Wily Cat prepare to escort Snarfer home, Snarf makes a surprising announcement. He's leaving too. But as the Feliner lifts off, nostalgia tugs at his heart, and he makes a last-minute decision. Third Earth is his home, and he's staying.
Stop them!
Episode 31, Mandora and the Pirates. As Mandora patrols the area around the Grey Prison Planet, she spots a massive, battered spaceship violating multiple space travel laws. She flags it down and boards the freighter, where she finds the so-called captain, a grizzled, one-eyed pirate who insists he's the only one on board. Unconvinced, Mandora orders him to pilot the ship to the Grey Prison Planet for further inspection. Meanwhile, back in the Cat's Lair control room, Lion-O and Snarf monitor Mandora's activities. The moment they lay eyes on the ship, they recognize it. It's the Jolly Rogers, the notorious pirate vessel belonging to Captain Cracker. They quickly radio Mandora with the warning, but before she can react, Cracker and his robotic crew spring their trap. They overpower her, locking her inside the ship's control chamber before setting their sinister plan into motion, unleashing every inmate from the Grey Prison Planet. Trapped, but not out of options, Mandora manages to activate a remote control, summoning her electrocharger to fly to Lion-O on Third Earth. Understanding the urgency, Lion-O leaps into action, heading straight for the prison planet. The first escape he encounters is a belligerent rhinosauran, but before things get too rough, Quick-Pick suddenly appears, lending a hand. Together, they subdue the prisoner and set off to find Mandora. Elsewhere in the prison, Cracker has Mandora bound and dangling precariously over a massive cauldron of boiling oil. Just as he prepares to drop her in, Lion-O and Quick-Pick storm the room, fighting off the pirate crew and freeing her. But Cracker isn't done yet. He captures Lion-O and forces him to walk the plank into the void of space. Blindfolded and teetering on the edge, Lion-O nearly falls to his doom before Mandora and Quick-Pick swoop in, saving him just in time. As Cracker sets a course for Third Earth, Lion-O warns the other Thundercats of the approaching threat. With quick coordination, they ensnare the Jolly Rogers in a massive net, capturing Cracker and his robotic crew. With justice restored, Mandora transports the defeated pirates back to the grey prison planet, this time with no chance of escape.
Time we gave that mechanosect a little shock.
Episode 32, Return of the Driller. The Unicorn Forest was peaceful as the Thunder Kittens happily picked apples, but miles away, deep inside his shadowy pyramid, Mum-Ra seethed. Through his cauldron's swirling mist, he watched the Thundercats thrive on Third Earth, and he could not stand it. With a sinister plan forming, Mum-Ra summoned the Driller, an earth-moving mercenary from the depths. In exchange for a handful of glittering diamonds, the Driller carved a tunnel from the toxic acid lake straight to Cat's lair. As the job was finished, the highly corrosive ultrasulfic acid began seeping into the lair's foundations. Inside Cat's lair, the Thundercats soon caught a whiff of something foul. Tigra, always the sharp one, identified it immediately: ultrasulfic acid. The Sword of Omens confirmed their worst fears, revealing the massive pool of acid beneath them. Their only hope? Sponge fog, the sole material capable of neutralizing the substance. Wasting no time, they set out to retrieve it. In a valley thick with sponge fog, Panthro used the Thunder Tank's mechanical cutters to harvest a large block, but their return was anything but smooth. The Rockmen ambushed them, raining boulders down in a relentless attack. Forced to divert, they plunged into the eerie forest of giant insects, where monstrous creatures lurked. A mechanosect, a giant beetle, and a massive worm nearly swallowed Lion-O whole. But the Thundercats fought their way through. Determined to stop them, Mum-Ra took matters into his own hands. In his ever-living form, he ambushed them at the Bridge of Light, shattering it and sending the Thunder Tank crashing into the River of Despair. Battling the Whirlpool of Infinity, they barely escaped, racing back just in time to seal the Driller's tunnel with the sponge fog, saving Cat's lair before it crumbled into ruin. Episode 33, Dimension Doom. On a cool night, Cheetara jolted awake, her heart hammering as a ghostly image flickered in her bedroom mirror. Wiz-Ra, the vision lasted seconds before vanishing, leaving her unsure if she had truly seen it. Torn between telling the others and dismissing it as a dream, she ultimately chose silence. Elsewhere, Mum-Ra, peering into the mystical waters of his cauldron, smirked as he watched the scene unfold. He turned to Slythe and revealed the truth. Wiz-Ra, a powerful sorcerer, had once possessed the golden helmet of Far Nor, an artifact granting dominion over minds. Long ago, Mum-Ra had deceived the Great Sphinx into exiling Wiz-Ra to the 7th dimension for eternity. However, every 7,000 years, the sorcerer could return for one day, entering Third Earth through a portal. This time, coinciding with Cheetara's mirror. Determined to seize the helmet before Wiz-Ra could reclaim it, Mum-Ra summoned the Fatata Cheetah, a spectral beast, and ordered it to infiltrate Cat's lair. The creature obeyed, slipping into Cheetara's room and merging with her body. When Wiz-Ra reappeared, the beast sprang from within her, snatching the helmet and racing back to Mum-Ra. Lion-O and Snarf found Cheetara unresponsive, trapped in a trance woven by Mum-Ra's dark magic. Wiz-Ra, weakened without his helmet, explained that only its power could free her. Without hesitation, the trio set off for Mum-Ra's lair, but the ancient sorcerer was ready. He placed the helmet upon Lion-O's head, bending his will. As the young lord hurled the Sword of Omens into the desert of sinking sands, he turned on Wizra, the sorcerer, summoning his last reserves of power, froze him in place. One by one, the other Thundercats arrived, only to fall under Mum-Ra's thrall as well. Drained, Wizra and Snarf retreated to regroup. Meanwhile, Chitara broke free of her trance. Determined, she rejoined Wizra and Snarf, sneaking into the pyramid unnoticed. She shifted the Vulture King's statue just as the sun's rays hit its eye, tricking Mum-Ra into believing Wizra's time had run out. The moment he removed the helmet, Snarf seized it and returned it to its rightful owner. Restored, Wizra shattered Mum-Ra's control over the Thundercats and struck him with a surge of energy, sealing the fiend back into his sarcophagus. With peace restored, Wizra bid Chitara farewell and stepped through the portal. As they returned home, Lion-O summoned his sword from the sands, its gleaming blade flying back to his hand, just as it always should. Episode 34, Queen of Eight Legs. In the Black Pyramid, Nemesis, the dark force that fuels Mum-Ra's evil, delivers ominous news. The Kingdom of Webs has a new queen, Spiderer. Sensing an opportunity, Mum-Ra devises a sinister plan to use Spiderer against the Thundercats. Disguising himself as a diamond fly, he sets his trap in motion. Under the guise of a shimmering insect, Mum-Ra flutters toward Cat's lair, feigning distress. The ruse works. Lion-O, drawn by the hypnotic glow of the diamond fly's wings, follows it deep into the forest. Just as the deception is about to succeed, Snarf arrives in the nick of time, breaking Lion-O from his trance. Sensing trouble, Lion-O wields the Sword of Omens, exposing the diamond fly's true form. But before he can strike, a monstrous spider minion ensnares Snarf in a web and drags him underground. Without hesitation, Lion-O follows, venturing into the eerie depths of Spiderer's lair. Emerging from the shadows, Spiderer makes her grand entrance, her many eyes gleaming with malice. Lion-O calls for reinforcements with the Sword of Omens, but before he can strike, Spiderer knocks the blade from his grip and entraps him in a massive web, leaving him helpless. Moments later, the other Thundercats arrive in the Thunder Tank, launching a fierce attack. Despite their efforts, Spiderer proves too powerful. One by one, she captures them in her silken threads. At the last moment, Tigra hurls the Sword of Omens to Snarf, who quickly tosses it to Lion-O. With a powerful slash, Lion-O breaks free, rallying his team. Together, they unleash their full strength against Spiderer, finally crushing her beneath a cascade of boulders.
Follow the arrows to the old space sailor's rest.
Episode 35, Sword in a Hole. On a regular day in the main control room, Panthro intercepts a distress signal from a spaceship called the Virtus. The SOS reveals that the ship is stranded in the Sea of Stars, dangerously close to a massive black hole. Wasting no time, Lion-O, Chitara and Snarf launch the feliner and race to the rescue. When they arrive, the Virtus is drifting on the very edge of the black hole's gravitational pull. Lion-O and Snarf board the ship, only to find it eerily deserted. As they search for the crew, they stumble upon a table set with freshly brewed coffee. The moment they inhale its fumes, both collapse into unconsciousness. Back in the feliner, Chitara is suddenly fired upon by the Virtus cannons. Dodging the attack, she realizes she's outnumbered and retreats to the cat's lair for reinforcements. Meanwhile, Lion-O and Snarf awaken to find themselves bound and at the mercy of Captain Shiner, the Virtus's commander. Before they can question him, Mum-Ra materializes, revealing that this entire scenario was his trap to steal the Sword of Omens. With a sinister laugh, he hurls the sword into the black hole, then chains Lion-O and Snarf in the ship's reactor room, forcing them to haul heavy boron rods. Chitara soon returns with Panthro, who sneaks aboard undetected and frees his captive friends. Together, they seize control of the Virtus and, in a desperate gamble, steer it straight into the black hole, much to Captain Shiner's horror. But as they plunge into the abyss, they realize it's not a black hole at all, but an artificial force field designed to mimic one. Inside, they encounter Neptune, an advanced AI created to clear space debris. Without warning, Neptune imprisons them in titanium cells. Guided by Jagger's spirit, Lion-O summons the Sword of Omens back to him, using it to break them free. Panthro then manipulates the station's controls, reversing the field's polarity and ejecting everything it had consumed. The Virtus is hurled through space, colliding with an asteroid and sustaining critical damage. Shiner orders the Thundercats to abandon ship while he remains behind. As the feliner carries them to safety, they remain unaware that Shiner has secretly escaped in a smaller vessel, vanishing into thin air. Episode 36, The Evil Harp of Charnin. While wandering within the dense forests of Third Earth, Wilykit and Wilycat hear an eerie yet mesmerizing melody drifting through the trees. Curious, they follow the sound until the ground suddenly gives way beneath them, dropping them into a hidden pit. There, half buried in the earth, they discover a golden harp playing by itself. As they pull it free, a swirl of golden mist coalesces into a towering figure, a genie. Introducing himself as Charnin, the genie of the great golden harp, he bowed before the wide-eyed Thunder Kittens, proclaiming them his new masters. He promises to grant their every wish. All they need to do is play the harp. Eager to test their newfound power, Wilykit and Wilycat wish to be lifted from the pit. Charnin obliges effortlessly. Meanwhile, Mum-Ra, watching through his enchanted cauldron, devises a sinister plan. He transforms himself into a weary Balkan traveller and makes his way to Cat's lair, seeking shelter. The Thunder Kittens, unaware of his true identity, offer him a place to rest. Once inside, Mum-Ra uses a hypnotic pendant to entrance them, compelling them to lead him to the harp. Strumming the strings, he summons Charnin and strikes a deal. In exchange for destroying the Thundercats, Mum-Ra promises to free the genie from his prison. With his scheme set in motion, Mum-Ra vanishes. The Thunder Kittens, awakening from their trance with no memory of what transpired, eagerly present the harp to Lion-O. Skeptical at first, Lion-O plays a note and vanishes in a puff of smoke. Alarmed, Wilykit and Wilycat demand to know where he has gone. Charnin grants their wish, transporting them all to the heart of Third Earth, where Lion-O lies bound. With a flick of his wrist, the genie ensnares the Thunder Kittens as well. Thinking quickly, they challenge Charnin to prove his power by summoning a rare snake bird. As he departs, Lion-O struggles free, just in time for the genie's return. A fierce battle ensues. Even with reinforcements, the Thundercats find themselves overpowered until Mum-Ra arrives, gloating. But when he reneges on his promise to Charnin, the genie turns on him. Their battle shakes the earth, forcing the Thundercats to flee as the cavern collapses. Escaping in the Thunder Tank, they assume both villains are destroyed, but as they vanish into the distance, Mum-Ra's laughter rises from the rubble, echoing into the night. Episode 37, Lion-O's Anointment, First Day. On the morning of his birthday, Lion-O woke up expecting a celebration, but the lair was eerily empty. Before he could call out, Snarf appeared, his expression unusually serious. Apparently, it was Anointment Day for the hero. Lion-O listened intently as Snarf explained. According to the code of Thundera, every lord of the Thundercats must prove their worth by overcoming a series of grueling trials, without the Sword of Omens or the Claw Shield. Worst of all, he would have to face his fellow Thundercats in combat. Handing him a map, Snarf wished him luck, and Lion-O set off. The first challenge was immediate. He braved a field of stinging flowers, their sharp tendrils scraping against his skin. Then came Acid Lake. Its surface bubbled ominously. Spotting a massive vulture-like creature, Lion-O managed to snare it, using its wings to glide across the lake just as the acidic waters hissed beneath him. On the other side, he encountered the Great Void, a ghostly phantom that lunged at him. With sheer determination, he fought back and vanquished the creature before pressing on. The Vortex was next, a rocky chasm that sucked in everything with howling winds. Gritting his teeth, Lion-O pushed forward, barely escaping its pull before collapsing on a nearby beach. His rest was short-lived. Two monstrous crabmen burst from the sand, claws snapping. Dodging their strikes, Lion-O outmaneuvered them and continued his journey until he reached a mountain near Wallow Village, where Panthro was waiting. Hesitant to fight his friend, Lion-O was forced to engage. Their battle was fierce, but then an earthquake struck, opening a deep crevice beneath him. As he clung to the edge, Panthro reached out, but Lion-O, unwilling to break the code, pulled himself up alone. Then, a boulder rumbled down the mountain toward Wallow Village. Panthro tried to stop it, but was nearly crushed. Acting fast, Lion-O took over, diverting the boulder just in time. Recognizing his strength, Panthro handed him the Thundercats insignia, his first victory. Meanwhile, back in the cat's lair, the Sword of Omens shined. Episode 38, The Demolisher. A mysterious spaceship descends upon Third Earth, its metallic frame gleaming under the eerie glow of Mum-Ra's Black Pyramid. The ship belongs to Demolisher, a relentless warrior who scours the galaxy for worthy opponents. At his side, his ever-loyal sidekick Dirge encourages him to battle the strongest being on this planet, Mum-Ra, the ever-living. Intrigued, Demolisher issues his challenge, and the ancient sorcerer rises from his lair, ready for combat. The battle is fierce, each strike shaking the very ground beneath them. But in the end, Demolisher overpowers Mum-Ra, pinning him to the dirt. A flash of silver catches Mum-Ra's eye, his reflection in the alien's polished boot. With a guttural cry, he recoils and vanishes into the safety of his pyramid. Moments later, a ball of light emerges from the darkness, carrying an invitation. Mum-Ra tempts Demolisher inside, promising to reveal an even greater warrior. Within the Black Pyramid's eerie halls, Mum-Ra conjures images of Lion-O in his cauldron. Demolisher scoffed at the young Thundercat, dismissing him as nothing more than a child with a sword. But Mum-Ra's words slither into his mind, prodding his ego, until Demolisher can no longer resist the challenge. Rocketing through the sky, he ambushes Lion-O and Snarf without warning. Lion-O barely has time to react before he's locked in a brutal fight. Blow after blow, weapon after weapon, Demolisher unleashes his full arsenal. But Lion-O's strength and the Sword of Omens meet every attack. At last, Demolisher ensnares him with his powerful grounder, trapping Lion-O in an electric field. Victory seems certain. Then, with sheer force, Lion-O shatters his restraints. Shock flashes across Demolisher's face. As the other Thundercats arrive, Lion-O hurls his claw lines, dragging the alien ship to the ground. Defeated but unyielding, Demolisher refuses Lion-O's offer to fight for something greater than himself. Episode 39, Monkian's Bargain. Summoned to the Black Pyramid, Monkian listens eagerly as Mum-Ra offers him a tantalizing deal: dominion over the entire northern sector of Third Earth in exchange for the Eye of Thundera. Without hesitation, Monkian agrees, and Mum-Ra bestows upon him the powerful spheres of power to aid his mission. As Monkian turns to leave, the ancient sorcerer issues a cryptic warning: great power comes with a price. But Monkian, blinded by ambition, readily accepts the cost. Wasting no time, Monkian storms toward Cat's lair. Outside the fortress, he encounters Panthro and Chitara. Wielding the sphere's energy, he effortlessly overpowers them, trapping them within shimmering force fields. Tigra rushes to intercept him at the drawbridge, but he too falls victim to the sphere's magic. Once inside, Monkian dispatches Wily Kit and Wily Cat with ease, binding them before heading straight for the sword chamber. But just as he reaches for the Sword of Omens, Lion-O and Snarf block his path. Unfazed, Monkian taps into the sphere's true power, transforming into a towering, monstrous version of himself outside Cat's lair. Seizing Lion-O, Snarf, and the sword, he triumphantly returns to Mum-Ra's pyramid. Mum-Ra, reveling in his victory, locks the Sword of Omens inside his sarcophagus. But Lion-O, ever the strategist, exploits Monkian's greed, whispering just the right words to turn him against his master. Enraged, Monkian battles and defeats Mum-Ra, only to realize the sorcerer's warning was true. The price of his power is eternal imprisonment within the pyramid. Panicked, Monkian abandons his newfound strength, fleeing in terror. With his friends freed, Lion-O summons the Thundercats, and in the ensuing battle, he forces Mum-Ra to gaze upon his own reflection, sending the ancient villain retreating into the shadows once more. Episode 40, Tight Squeeze. The mutants, having furbished their nosediver with the powerful Thundranium cannon, set a trap for the Thundercats in a rugged mountain pass. Unaware of the ambush, the Thundercats arrive in the Thunder Tank, but Slythe, overconfident in his strategy, waits too long to fire. The Thundranium shells, meant to weaken the cats, disintegrate on impact, failing to do any damage. With their plan in shambles, the mutants make a panicked retreat, losing the nosediver in the process. Back at Castle Plundar, tensions boil over. Rather than admitting his mistake, Slythe pins the failure on Vultureman, claiming his weapon was faulty. Outraged, Vultureman retaliates in the most dramatic way possible. He triggers the self-destruct function on all his inventions, leaving the mutants defenseless and without transportation. Desperate to tip the scales, Slythe turns to Mumra, who conjures the bolts of evil, an energy dragon that wreaks havoc on Cat's Lair's electronics, and seals the sword chamber shut, trapping all of the Thundercats' weapons inside. Determined to recover the Sword of Omens, the Thundercats send Snarf through the ventilation shaft to retrieve it. Meanwhile, the mutants storm the lair, capturing Chitara and Panthro and locking them away in Castle Plundar. Jackalman, being the slimmest of the bunch, is sent crawling after Snarf through the vents. As a weaponless Lion-O fends off Slythe and Munkian, Mumra joins the fight, tipping the odds in the villain's favour. But just in time, Snarf burst onto the scene, the Sword of Omens clutched in his mouth. He tosses it to Lion-O, who immediately summons his allies. Fueled by determination, Panthro and Chitara break free and race back to the lair. With the Thundercats reunited and armed, the villains have no choice but to retreat once again. Episode 41, The Mycrits. As Panthro steered the Thunder Tank back to Cat's Lair, its cargo hold brimming with fresh Thundrillium, he remained blissfully unaware of the destruction left in his wake. Beneath the tank's massive treads lay a tiny village, home to the Mycrits, a race of small but intelligent humanoids. Their homes, their lives, crushed in an instant. Enraged, the Mycrits swore revenge against the Thundercats, whom they saw as careless giants. Under the cover of darkness, the Mycrits infiltrated Cat's Lair, sabotaging its power systems and stealing the Thundercats' weapons. They even tampered with the Thunder Tank, ensuring the Thundercats would be powerless in their moment of need. Meanwhile, Lion-O, having stayed behind to search for additional Thundrillium sources, rested in a nearby field. The Mycrits seized their opportunity, binding him with Thundranium-laced ropes. The powerful metal sapped his strength, making escape impossible. When Snarf arrived, hoping to rouse his friend, he too found himself unable to break the enchanted bindings. At the same time, the mutants, always watching for weakness, noticed that Cat's Lair had gone dark. Sensing an opportunity, they launched a full-scale assault. The weaponless Thundercats fought valiantly, but they were losing ground. Desperate to help, Lion-O struck a deal with the Mycrits. They would release him in exchange for keeping Snarf as collateral. With their weapons reclaimed, Lion-O raced back to the lair. The tide of battle turned swiftly, and together the Thundercats forced the mutants into retreat. Returning to free Snarf, Lion-O found him playing chess with the Mycrits, who had amusingly taken the place of the pieces. With peace restored, the Thundercats placed markers around the Mycrits' village, ensuring such destruction would never happen again. Episode 42, Lion-O's Anointment, Second Day. Unaware of the true nature of the anointment trials, Munkian happily reports to his fellow mutants that the Thundercats are fighting among themselves, and that Lion-O is travelling without the Sword of Omens. Seizing what they see as a golden opportunity, Slythe rallies the mutants, and they speed off in their vehicles, eager to ambush the young Thundercat. Meanwhile, having bested Panthro in combat, Lion-O reunites with Chitara to begin his second trial, one that will test his speed against the fastest of the Thundercats. Realizing he has no chance of outrunning Chitara in a straight race, Lion-O makes a bold decision. He will take the shorter but far more dangerous route. As Chitara races along the longer path, the mutants launch a surprise attack from their sky cutters and nosediver. Caught off guard, she dodges and weaves through their assault, but the situation looks grim until Panthro arrives in the Thunder Tank. Unleashing a barrage of laser fire, he drives the mutants back, sending them fleeing to Castle Plundar. Meanwhile, Lion-O faces a series of perilous challenges on his chosen route. He braves the carnivorous Mandroga flower, fends off the furious ferrets, navigates a school of razor-toothed piranhas, survives the treacherous whirlpool of infinity, and battles the monstrous two-headed Golrak. Determined, he pushes forward, undeterred by the hazards in his path. Eventually, both Thundercats' routes converge just 5 miles from the finish line. With the sun dipping below the horizon, they launch into an all-out sprint. Cheetara surges ahead effortlessly, her unmatched speed carrying her far in front. Discouraged, Lion-O nearly resigns himself to defeat, but quickly reminds himself that losing with honor is far better than giving up. Digging deep, he presses on, unaware that Cheetara's top speed can only be maintained for 2 miles. As her pace falters, Lion-O surges past her, claiming victory. Back at the cat's lair, the Thundercats celebrate Lion-O's win and prepare him for the next day's trial against the Thunder Kittens. Tigra warned him that he would need all his cunning to outwit the clever twins. However, far from the camaraderie of Cat's lair, Mum-Ra watches through his cauldron, plotting his next move. The young lord's trials are far from over, and the ancient sorcerer intends to make sure that the next challenge is far deadlier than any before. Episode 43, The Rock Giant. Wily Kit and Wily Cat hurtled through the storm-ravaged forest, their hearts pounding as rain lashed at their faces. Their spaceboards, once their trusted means of travel, now lay in shattered pieces behind them, destroyed by the merciless storm. Struggling through the howling wind and pelting rain, the twins managed to radio Cat's lair for help, their voices barely audible over the crackling static. Just as they thought the worst was behind them, a familiar menace loomed overhead. Jackalman, flying the Sky Cutter, spotted the stranded Thunder Kittens and wasted no time in opening fire. Dodging through the trees, Wily Kit and Wily Cat scrambled for cover. Thinking fast, they reached into their pouches, fingers closing around their signature trick pellets. With expert precision, they launched a flurry of pellets at Jackalman's Sky Cutter, sending him spiraling out of control. The mutant crashed into the trees with a yelp, leaving the vehicle unoccupied. Wasting no time, the twins climbed aboard and took control of the Sky Cutter, feeling a surge of triumph. However, their victory was short-lived. Lion-O and Panthro, responding to the distress call, arrived on the scene. Seeing the Sky Cutter soaring toward them, they mistook its pilots for mutants and opened fire. The twins weaved through the air, barely avoiding the blasts. Desperately, they maneuvered closer, calling out until their voices broke through the chaos. Finally, Lion-O and Panthro realized their mistake, ceasing fire just in time. Meanwhile, far from the battle, Mum-Ra worked his dark magic. With a guttural chant, he awakened an ancient rock giant, commanding it to destroy the Thundercats. Towering over the land, the monstrous being lumbered toward Cat's lair, launching massive boulders and spewing searing flames. The Thunder Tank dodged the onslaught, but nothing they threw at the giant made a dent. Then, Jagger appeared, his spectral presence a beacon of wisdom. He reminded Lion-O of the ancients' knowledge, how fire and water, heat and cold could shape the strongest stone. Armed with a plan, Lion-O faced the rock giant, unleashing a relentless blast from the Sword of Omens until the creature glowed white-hot. Then, with one final strike, he sent it toppling into the moat. The instant cold shattered the heated stone, crumbling the rock giant into dust. The Thundercats had won the day once more. Episode 44, Jackalman's Rebellion. Jackalman is going vigilante in this episode as he seizes the flying machine and escapes from his fellow mutants who pursue him in the Sky Cutters and Nosediver. Despite their efforts, he manages to elude them, finally landing in a secluded area. There, he recruits 2 formidable allies, Mole Master and the Driller, forming his own gang. When the mutants track him down, they find themselves outmatched by General Jackalman and his newfound army. Emboldened by his victory, Jackalman sets his sights on bigger prey. He devises a scheme to capture Cheetara, using a unicorn as bait, but the plan backfires. Undeterred, he leads his gang to Wallow Village, launching a full-scale raid. However, their destruction is cut short when the Thundercats arrive in the Thunder Tank to stop them. Refusing to face them head-on, Jackalman and his allies take to the skies in the flying machine, unleashing a barrage of aerial mines. One detonates near the Thunder Tank, crippling it and forcing the Thundercats to give chase on foot. As the battle breaks out, Chitara takes on Mole Master, Tigra duels the Driller, and Lion-O confronts Jackalman himself. Just as Lion-O gains the upper hand, the remaining mutants, Slythe, Monkeyan, and Vultureman, ambush him, attempting to wrest the Sword of Omens from his grasp. But before they can succeed, Lion-O calls upon his fellow Thundercats, who come to his aid and send the mutants retreating. Defeated and humiliated, Jackalman is dragged back to Castle Plundar, where he faces the wrath of his former allies, who have no patience for deserters. Episode 45, Termagar the Tusker. Atop his reliable ride, the Gomplin Termagar, the formidable leader of the Tuskers, makes his way toward Cat's lair. His arrival is anything but subtle. The lair's intruder alarms blare to life, drawing the Thundercats outside just in time to witness Termagar's rough crash landing. Scrambling to his feet with their help, he wastes no time explaining his dire mission. A monstrous war machine known as the Giant Technopede is ravaging Tuscania, threatening the Tusker's only water source. He needs the Thundercats' help. Without hesitation, they agree, as Panthro and the Thunder Kittens stay behind to repair the battered Gomplin. The rest of the team speeds off in the Thunder Tank, bound for Tuscania. Their path leads them through the treacherous River of Despair, where danger lurks beneath the surface. A powerful current pulls at their vehicle, a black widow shark prowls nearby, and, most perilous of all, a vampire mermaid emerges from the depths. Her hypnotic song lures Tigra under her spell, drawing him toward her fanged embrace. But before she can strike, Chitara and Lion-O intervene. In a swift move, Lion-O traps her within an underwater cave, and the team presses on. When they finally reach Tuscania, they find the Tusker warriors struggling against the towering Technopede. The Thundercats leap into battle, but their attacks barely scratch the massive machine. Just when hope dims, Panthro and the Thunder Kittens arrive, soaring in on the restored Gomplin. With a new strategy, they target the Technopede's legs. A concentrated assault brings the war machine crashing down, erupting into a fiery explosion.
I can't hang on!
Episode 46, Lion-O's Anointment, Third Day. As the mutants learn about the third trial, they waste no time racing toward the Maze of Infinity, the site of Lion-O's third challenge. This time, he must outwit the cunning Thunder Kittens, Wily Kit, and Wily Cat. The mutants, hoping to sabotage the trial, attack what they believe is Lion-O, only to discover it's a clever decoy. Meanwhile, the real Lion-O ambushes Slythe with a barrage of flaming rocks, forcing the reptilian warlord to retreat in frustration. With the mutants momentarily out of the way, Lion-O and the Thunder Kittens enter the maze. Inside, the twins quickly turn the labyrinth to their advantage, tricking Lion-O into chasing cardboard cutouts of themselves. Before he realizes the deception, he slips on diamond dust and tumbles deep into the maze's twisting corridors. As he regains his footing, Monkeyan, piloting his Skycutter, spots him. A heated skirmish ensues, sending both of them crashing into an underground stream. While Monkeyan manages to escape, Lion-O is swept away by the powerful currents and carried deeper into the labyrinth's hidden depths. Disoriented, Lion-O stumbles into the clutches of the Under-Earthmen, strange humanoid beings with enormous eyes. Their ancestors, they reveal, were once forced underground by the Over-Earthmen, who feared the vast knowledge contained in their books. Generations of living in darkness have weakened their eyesight, rendering them unable to read their own treasured texts. Seeing an opportunity, they imprison Lion-O, demanding he read to them for the rest of his life. Before he can devise a plan of escape, Monkeyan attacks from above, raining fire upon the Under-Earthmen's sacred books. Distressed by the destruction, they panic. Lion-O, unwilling to let harm come to them or their knowledge, draws Monkeyan away, luring him into a crash with a massive stalactite. Meanwhile, the Thunder Kittens find themselves battling a monstrous snake. In the struggle, they plummet over a cliff, hanging precariously over the abyss. Lion-O arrives, but even he struggles to pull them to safety. Just then, the Under-Earthmen, grateful for his earlier heroism, come to their aid, hauling the three Thundercats up. In a final strategic move, Lion-O secures the twins' belts to a rock, using their own trickery against them. With that, he crosses the finish line and emerges victorious in his third trial. Episode 47, The Mumra Burble. Mumra, ever determined to destroy the Thundercats, summons the mutants to his pyramid once again, only to berate them for their repeated failures. Frustrated, he declares that he'll handle the Thundercats himself. With the power of the ancient spirits of evil, he transforms into the most unassuming disguise imaginable, a burble. Meanwhile, as Snarf strolls through the woods, a small injured burble tumbles from a tree, clutching its arm in pain. Moved by sympathy, Snarf brings the creature back to the cat's lair for medical care. The Thundercats, except for Lion-O, who's camping in the forest, tend to their guest, offering a warm bed for the night and promising to return him to his village in the morning. But as night falls, the burble sheds its disguise. Mumra shifts into a fearsome firebat, attacking Panthro in the control room. Despite his strength, Panthro is quickly overpowered. Mumra then reveals his ever-living form, snapping a mysterious metal bracelet onto Panthro's wrist. Instantly, Panthro becomes a mindless thrall, his eyes glowing red. One by one, Mumra ensnares Willycat, Willykit, and Chitara with the same cursed bracelets, turning them against their own. Unaware of the danger, Snarf awakens and checks on their burble guest, only to run into Tigra. Together, they discover the empty guest room and the missing Thundercats, realizing too late that the burble was Mumra all along. Their suspicions are confirmed when Mumra and his enthralled warriors ambush them. Tigra is swiftly captured and turned, while Snarf barely escapes through a window, rushing to warn Lion-O. By morning, Snarf finds Lion-O and relays the dire situation. Determined, they return to the lair, only to find it eerily empty. Splitting up to search faster, Lion-O scans the monitors while Snarf is ambushed. A metal bracelet snaps onto Snarf's tail, turning him against his friend. Now, under Mumra's control, Snarf attacks Lion-O, and the possessed Thundercats close in, blasting him with their glowing red eyes. Lion-O barely escapes into the forest, where Mumra follows, ready to end their feud once and for all. Before Lion-O can use Mumra's reflection against him, Mumra smugly dons enchanted sunglasses, blocking the trick. Thinking fast, Lion-O summons the Thundercats with the Sword of Omens, breaking Mumra's spell. Together, they pin him down and rip off his glasses. At last, he sees his reflection and, as always, recoils in horror, reverting to his feeble mummy form and retreating to his pyramid. Back at the lair, the Thundercats are still under attack from Snarf, who hadn't seen the cat's signal and remained under Mumra's spell. But Lion-O hoisted him up while Panthro removed the bracelet, breaking the curse. With Snarf finally back to normal, the Thundercats breathed a sigh of relief until the next battle came knocking. Episode 48, Mechanical Plague. Panthro proudly reveals his latest invention, the holographic recorder, a floating video cam designed to chronicle the Thundercats' adventures. His goal, to preserve their skills and wisdom in a time capsule for future generations. Excited by the idea, each Thundercat eagerly sets off in a different direction, their recorders trailing behind to capture their feats. But from the depths of his dark lair, Mumra watches through his cauldron, seething with malicious intent. Determined to put an end to their legacy before it even begins, he journeys to a desolate, barren land. There, invoking the ancient spirits of iron and steel, he summons a quartet of deadly mechanical beasts: the towering Technopede, the relentless Plundarian Warbot, the tunneling Driller, and the winged terror Mechanosect. With a single command, he sends them to hunt down the Thundercats. One by one, the machines strike. The Technopede charges at Panthro, the Warbot locks onto Tigra, the Driller traps Chitara deep in Rockmen territory, and the Mechanosect ambushes the Thunder Kittens. Meanwhile, Mumra orders the mutants to take advantage of the chaos and attack Lion-O, who is busy demonstrating his swordsmanship for the recorder. Just in time, the Sword of Omens senses danger and alerts Lion-O. Raising the blade high, he summons his allies with the cat's signal. The sight of it ignites a surge of strength in his teammates, turning the tide of battle. One by one, they overcome their mechanical foes and race to Lion-O's aid, forcing the mutants to retreat. Episode 49, Trapped, a relentless storm raged across Third Earth, battering the feliner as Tigra and Chitara struggled to keep the ship steady. From inside the cat's lair, Panthro frantically worked the controls, attempting to guide them to safety, but the violent winds and torrential rain made landing impossible. Suddenly, Snarf burst into the control room, his fur bristling with alarm, announcing that the Thunder Kittens were missing. Deep within the forest, Wily Kit and Wily Cat darted through the downpour, their small forms barely visible in the relentless sheets of rain. Desperate for shelter, they stumbled upon a long-forgotten suspension capsule from their original flagship. Clambering inside, they sighed in relief, only to realize their predicament. The lid had jammed shut, trapping them. With a shaky hand, Wily Kit managed to activate her communicator, asking for help, but before the message could fully reach its destination, the transmission was intercepted. In Castle Plundar, Vultureman cackled as he relayed the coordinates to Slythe, who wasted no time in launching the nosediver. Moments later, the capsule was yanked from the forest floor and towed away. Far away, Mum-Ra observed the events unfold through his cauldron. A sinister grin stretched across his face. Before the mutants could claim their prize, the ancient sorcerer swooped down, snatching the capsule right out of their grasp. Back at Cat's lair, Lion-O battled against the elements, struggling to free the Thunder Tank, which had been pinned under one of the lair's giant claws. Meanwhile, the feliner remained trapped in the storm. Thinking fast, Lion-O raised the Sword of Omens and activated the cat signal, its beacon cutting through the storm and guiding the feliner to a safe landing. With their forces reunited, the Thundercats raced to Castle Plundar, only to see Mum-Ra disappearing into the sky with the capsule. Determined, Lion-O fired his claw line, latching onto the mummy's billowing cape. He was dragged through the air straight to the Black Pyramid. As the battle erupted, Wily Kit reached into her pouch and pulled out a trick pellet, blowing a shimmering, reflective bubble. Mum-Ra barely had a chance to react before his own grotesque reflection stared back at him. With a terrified shriek, he recoiled, abandoning the capsule as he fled into the depths of his lair. With the twins finally safe, the Thundercats returned to the lair. Episode 50, Lion-O's Anointment, 4th Day. As Lion-O and Tigra prepare for the 4th anointment trial, they're ambushed by the mutants in their attack vehicles. Thinking fast, Tigra uses his mind powers to conjure illusions, a snow bridge appearing out of nowhere, followed by a fierce blizzard. The mutants, tricked and disoriented, retreat in fear, but Lion-O sees through the deception and pushes forward. Determined not to give up, the mutants return, pursuing Lion-O. After damaging the Sky Cutter, Lion-O takes cover inside a cave to escape Jackalman and Monkeyan, who prowl the area in their nosedivers. As he crawls out through the back of the cave, his belt slips off unnoticed. Inside the cave, Snow Meow, the massive wild cat, picks up the belt in his jaws. When Jackalman and Monkeyan spot him, they assume the worst, that the beast has devoured Lion-O, and flee in terror. But Slythe isn't so easily convinced. Flying in on the Sky Cutter, he searches for Lion-O himself. The moment he finds him, he attacks, forcing Lion-O into a desperate struggle that ends with him hanging dangerously over a cliff's edge. Just as Slythe prepares to finish him off, Tigra steps in, creating a massive illusion of the cat signal to distract the reptilian warlord. Seizing the opportunity, Snow Meow pulls Lion-O to safety and returns his belt. As the trial nears its end, Tigra delivers his final test, an illusion of Thunderer's destruction, the nightmare that has haunted Lion-O for years. Fear threatens to consume him, but he finds his inner strength, shattering the vision. At last, he faced Tigra directly, swiftly taking him down in combat, securing his victory in the 4th anointment trial. Episode 51, Excalibur. Determined to destroy the Sword of Omens once and for all, the ancient spirits of evil command Mum-Ra to seek out Excalibur, the legendary blade said to be the most powerful ever forged. The wicked sorcerer takes on the guise of King Arthur and tricks the Lady of the Lake into granting him the sword. Now wielding Excalibur, Mum-Ra, still disguised as the noble king, arrives at the cat's lair, claiming he was sent by Jaga. The Thundercats welcome their supposed guest, but his arrogance and sharp tongue quickly test their patience. Lion-O, unable to ignore the stranger's disrespect, confronts him, and the disguised Mum-Ra seizes the opportunity to challenge the young lord to a duel at dawn. The next morning, the two warriors face off in a heated joust, their blades clashing with electrifying force. But when both swords are knocked from their hands, something something incredible happens. Excalibur and the Sword of Omens continue the battle on their own. The legendary weapon proves its might, striking the eye of Thundera and rendering the Thundercats powerless. With Lion-O collapsed and helpless, Mum-Ra prepares for the final blow. But before he can deliver it, a brilliant light fills the battlefield. Merlin himself materializes. With a wave of his hand, the ancient wizard banishes Mum-Ra back to his Black Pyramid and restores the Eye of Thundera, bringing the Thundercats back to full strength. As a token of respect, Merlin hands Excalibur to Lion-O. But knowing the blade belongs to history, Lion-O makes a noble choice. He returns it to its rightful place, ensuring its legend remains untouched. Episode 52, Secret of the Ice King. A powerful volcanic eruption near Hook Mountain unearthed a massive gemstone, its brilliance catching the sharp eyes of two circling pterodactyls. Swooping in to claim the prize, they fought viciously over it, only to lose their grip. The gemstone tumbled through the air and landed in the thick snow below. As sunlight hit its crystalline surface, the refracted light focused onto a colossal block of ice, melting it away to reveal a trapped giant, an ancient being stirring after centuries of imprisonment. Freed at last, the giant, now revealed as the Ice King, set his sights on the castle of the snowman. The snowman, sensing the threat, did everything in his power to stop the advancing figure, but was ultimately overwhelmed. As the Ice King's frosty magic surged forth, Snowman had only a moment to send his loyal companion Snow Meow in search of aid before he too was frozen solid. Snow Meow raced to Cat's lair, but only Lion-O was present. Wasting no time, the great feline carried Lion-O back to Hook Mountain, where they arrived just in time to see the Ice King reducing Snowman's castle to ruins. Lion-O leapt into battle, but his strength was no match for the Ice King's chilling power. In a matter of moments, he too was encased in ice. Undeterred, Snow Meow returned for the rest of the Thundercats. One by one, they fought, and one by one, they fell to the same frozen fate. Only Chitara remained. She spotted the Sword of Omens lying abandoned in the snow and placed it in Lion-O's frozen grasp. The sword, responding to its master, unleashed its latent heat, melting the ice and freeing him. With Lion-O restored, the others were soon liberated as well. Meanwhile, the Ice King unearthed an ancient dungeon beneath the shattered remains of the castle. Deep inside, he sought a jeweled egg guarded by a fierce dragon whose fiery breath kept him at bay. Realizing that the Ice King's true goal had never been to attack them, the Thundercats chose to aid him. As the egg was finally retrieved, the truth was revealed. Centuries ago, the Ice King had once been a noble prince, and within the egg lay his beloved princess, cursed and trapped for eternity. As he touched the egg, his icy form melted away, his spirit finally reuniting with hers in eternal peace. Episode 53, Good and Ugly. A classy and visually striking spaceship, the Chimera craft, speeds through space in pursuit of the Territor starship, a bulky, misshapen vessel that seems barely airworthy. Just as their ships reflect their natures, the beings piloting them follow suit. The Chimera is beautiful and refined, while the Territor is grotesque and awkward. The chase ends when the Territor starship, under attack, manages to escape and descends onto Third Earth, landing near the cat's lair. Watching the unidentified ship touch down, Lion-O immediately assumes the worst. When his request for identification goes unanswered, he attacks. In response, the Territor defends itself, striking Lion-O with a laser that paralyzes him, preventing him from calling for backup. Even the Sword of Omens refuses to obey his commands, but rather than pressing the attack, the Territor speaks, insisting that he means no harm. He reminds Lion-O that he struck first and claims he is not an enemy. Before Lion-O can make sense of it all, the Chimera craft reappears and shoots down the Territor starship. Landing at the cat's lair, the Chimera explains that the Territors are his sworn enemies, responsible for attacking his homeworld. He warns Lion-O to never trust a Territor, insisting that their evil nature is obvious just by looking at them. But something about his words unsettles Lion-O because the Territor told him the exact same story about the Chimera. As doubt creeps in, the Chimera suddenly attacks, revealing his true nature. Lion-O fights back, realizing that the one he'd trusted was the real villain. The Chimera craft attempts attempts to flee, but this time Lion-O is ready. Summoning the Thundercats with the Sword of Omens, they launch the Feliner in pursuit. Just as the battle intensifies, the Territos starship returns, not as an enemy, but as an ally. Together, the two ships fight back, and with one final strike from Lion-O's sword, the Chimera craft is destroyed. Episode 54, The Transfer. A spaceship carrying a deadly radioactive sphere hurtles toward Third Earth. If it crashes, the planet will be wiped out. Determined to stop the catastrophe, Lion-O and Panthro launch the Feliner to intercept the ship and neutralize the threat. Meanwhile, Mum-Ra appears before the mutants with a tempting proposition. Steal the sphere, and together they will rule Third Earth under the constant threat of annihilation. The mutants, blinded by ambition, accept the deal. To tip the odds in their favour, Mum-Ra conjures a raging storm, allowing Jackalman to sneak aboard the Feliner undetected. As Lion-O and Panthro close in on the spaceship, Jackalman seizes his moment, stealing the radioactive sphere and making his escape. But instead of honouring his pact with Mum-Ra and the mutants, he betrays them, intent on keeping the sphere for himself. Enraged, Mum-Ra captures Jackalman and drags him back to his Black Pyramid. The mutants, realising they've been double-crossed, set off in pursuit. As the Third Earth is still in danger, the Thundercats race after them. A fierce battle erupts as Mum-Ra, clutching the sphere, scales the pyramid's towering walls. The Thundercats unleash a barrage of firepower, forcing him to lose his grip. In a final, desperate move, Panthro thrusts the sphere toward Mum-Ra's face, forcing him to see his own reflection. Terrified, Mum-Ra flees to the safety of his crypt. With the enemy defeated, the Thundercats launch the sphere deep into space, where it detonates harmlessly. Episode 55, Divide and Conquer. Vulture-Man devises a cunning plan to bring down the Thundercats, this time with his latest invention, the voice imitator. With it, he perfectly mimics their voices, luring each Thundercat into a deadly trap. One by one, they fall into the mutants' carefully laid snares. Cheetara is ambushed by a massive, vicious giant bee. Tigra faces off against a monstrous wrestling tablet, and the Thunder Kittens are swallowed by a swirling, inescapable vortex. Isolated and unaware of the trick being played on them, the Thundercats struggle alone, their usual teamwork shattered. The mutants' strategy is working. They intend to eliminate them one at a time. But when Lion-O realizes what's happening, he races to save his friends, determined to reunite the team before it's too late. Meanwhile, Panthro pieces together the truth. The chaos stems from Vulture-Man's voice imitator. With this knowledge, he turns the tables on the mutants, using the device against them. Misled by their own deception, the mutants unwittingly steer their skycutters and nosedivers into a disastrous mid-air collision, foiling their own plan. In the aftermath, as the Thundercats regroup, Tigra reminds them of a hard-learned lesson. They must never allow themselves to be divided again. Communication and unity are their greatest strengths, and only by standing together can they hope to defeat their enemies in the future. Episode 56, Dream Master. Mum-Ra takes on the guise of the Dream Master, a sinister force capable of invading the dreams of Panthro, Cheetara, Tigra, and the Thunder Kittens. In their sleep, he twists their dreams into nightmares, exerting complete control over their minds. Under his spell, the Thundercats become weak and unresponsive in the real world, their energy and powers drained. While trapped in this dream state, they unknowingly sabotage themselves, wrecking the Thunder Tank during a battle with the mutants. One by one, their dream selves are overpowered by Mum-Ra in a terrifying battle of wills. He then imprisons them inside golden urns, intending to cast them into the whirlpool of infinity, a fate that would mean the destruction of their real-world selves as well. Fortunately, Snarf notices the Sword of Omens growling in warning and quickly alerts Lion-O, realizing something is terribly wrong. Lion-O uses the sword's power to locate Mum-Ra and understand the true nature of the Dream Master's spell. With the sword's guidance, he calls upon the rest of the Thundercats, summoning their dream selves and reuniting them with their physical forms. The spell is shattered in an instant. Just as Mum-Ra is about to hurl the urns into the whirlpool, Lion-O intervenes. The Sword of Omens rescues the trapped Thundercats, pulling them back from the brink. Awakened and restored, the Thundercats stand together once more, their strength renewed. Defeated, Mum-Ra is forced to retreat, his plot to destroy them foiled. United in mind and body, the Thundercats are victorious, proving once again that even in their darkest nightmares, their bond and the power of good can never be broken. Episode 57, Out of Sight. Willa was honing her longbow skills when a warning signal shattered the calm. Mutants were attacking. She and her sister, Nada, fought fiercely to defend their home, but a mutant laser struck the roof, setting it ablaze. Amid the chaos, Jackalman seized the opportunity to kidnap Willa, dragging her away to Castle Plundar. The Thundercats wasted no time mounting a rescue. Tigra and Nada, using their ability to turn invisible, slipped into the castle unnoticed. Inside, Tigra played on Jackalman's fears, posing as a ghost to send the cowardly mutant into a panic. His plan worked. Jackalman released Willa, but their escape wasn't easy. Slythe and Monkeyan ambushed them, forcing Tigra and Willa into a fight before they finally managed to flee into the forest. Once outside, however, Tigra and Nada realized they had a problem. They couldn't become visible again. No matter what they tried, they remained trapped in their unseen state. The only hope, the Eye of Thundera. Determined, they set off to find Lion-O, only to be attacked by Vultureman along the way. Despite their disadvantage, they managed to subdue him and later took down Monkeyan, Jackalman, and Slythe. Just when the battle seemed overwhelming, Lion-O arrived, commandeering a mutant flying machine. Holding the attackers at bay, he summoned the other Thundercats to help drive the mutants back to Castle Plundar. Even then, Tigra and Nada remained invisible, their predicament growing more worrisome by the second. But at last, with the power of the Eye of Thundera, their forms were restored, just in time to celebrate their victory.
One step closer, and I'll finish you with your own sword.
Episode 58, The Mountain. Mum-Ra, furious once more with the mutants, summons them to his lair and delivers an ultimatum. Bring him the Sword of Omens, or be banished from Third Earth forever. Desperate to appease him, the mutants ambush Lion-O while he's scaling a mountain, striking him with Thundranium cartridges to weaken him. Though struggling, Lion-O manages to summon Tigra and Panthro with the sword's signal. As Lion-O clings to the edge of a cliff, Jackalman lunges for the Sword of Omens, and in the scuffle, both plunge into the river below. Swept away by the current, they tumble over a waterfall. Meanwhile, the rest of the mutants accidentally trigger a rock slide, trapping themselves, along with Tigra and Panthro, inside a mountain cave. With no other choice, they agree to a temporary truce, though the mutants secretly plan to betray the Thundercats as soon as they break free. Elsewhere, Jackalman recovers first and seizes the sword from an unconscious Lion-O. As he scrambles up the mountainside, the sword resists, sending him on a wild, uncontrollable ride through the air before finally embedding itself into the cliff face high above the river. Lion-O, regaining his strength, catches up and saves the dangling Jackalman before commanding the sword to return to his hand. With the mutants still trapped, Lion-O rescues Tigra, Panthro, and their enemies from the cave. The mutants immediately turn on the Thundercats, but to their horror, their weapons are useless. Tigra and Panthro had emptied their ammunition while trapped inside. Defeated once again, the mutants retreat, leaving the Thundercats a winner again. Episode 59, The Superpower Potion. Vultureman invents a powerful potion that grants him extraordinary magical abilities. With his newfound strength, he mesmerizes and easily defeats Tigra. Seizing the opportunity, he offers Mum-Ra a tempting bargain. He will share the potion in exchange for the secret to everlasting life. Mum-Ra, intrigued but always scheming, agrees, at least on the surface. Drunk on power, Vultureman turns against his fellow mutants, asserting dominance over them. He puts Slythe into a trance and later ambushes Panthro, swiftly defeating him as he searches for Tigra. But Slythe eventually shakes off the spell and rallies the other mutants to find the potion, before Vultureman grows even stronger. Just as they uncover the vial, Mum-Ra materializes and seizes it for himself, proving once again that he is no ally to anyone. Undeterred, Vultureman continues his rampage, making himself a formidable threat to the Thundercats. With his sights set on ultimate victory, he challenges Lion-O, pushing him to his limits. It seems he might even win, until the potion's effects suddenly begin to wear off. In desperation, Vultureman turns to Mum-Ra, begging for another dose. But Mum-Ra, ever the treacherous master, refuses. His promise of eternal life is nothing more than a manipulation, and Vultureman is left powerless. Seizing the moment, Lion-O destroys the remaining potion, ensuring its magic can never be used again. Defeated and humiliated, Vultureman slinks away, his grand ambitions reduced to nothing more than fleeting dreams.
Thundercats!
Episode 60, Eye of the Beholder. The episode begins, and Snarf is overwhelmed by Jackalman in order to steal the precious sword of omens from him. Though the Thundercats quickly recover the real sword, the incident sparks an idea in Panthro's mind. Why not create a duplicate sword to lure the mutants into a trap? With the plan set in motion, the Thundercats spread a rumor that the cat's lair is unguarded, hoping to draw their enemies in. Their ploy works all too well. Two Trollocs overhear the rumor and pass it along to the mutants. Jackalman and Monkeyan take the bait, storming the lair to seize the fake sword of omens, only to capture Snarf in the process. They waste no time in handing both the sword and their captive over to Slythe, who sees an opportunity for power. Thinking he holds the key to ultimate strength, he takes the sword to Mum-Ra, hoping to strike a deal. But Mum-Ra has no intention of sharing power. In order to steal the precious sword of omens from him, he easily overpowers Slythe and seizes the sword for himself, believing he now holds the legendary Eye of Thundera. Meanwhile, the Thundercats' plan has backfired. Snarf is in real danger, and the mutants have inadvertently played into Mum-Ra's hands. The villain's downfall, however, is their inability to work together. Slythe's own might is right philosophy is turned against him when Mum-Ra proves that indeed someone stronger always comes along. But just as Mum-Ra prepares to unlock the sword's secrets, Lion-O reveals the ultimate deception. The sword is a fake. The real sword of omens, safe in Lion-O's grasp, alerts him to Snarf's peril. Wasting no time, Lion-O and Panthro race to Mum-Ra's pyramid. Lion-O uses the real sword to summon the other Thundercats, then blasts through the pyramid's walls, rescuing Snarf. Confused by the real sword of omens in Lion-O's possession, Mum-Ra attempts to awaken the power of the Eye of Thundera within his duplicate sword. But instead of the all-powerful eye, the blade reveals a mirror, reflecting Mum-Ra's own twisted visage. Overwhelmed by the sight of his own evil, he recoils in horror. This moment of self-exposure proves his ultimate weakness. Mum-Ra, for all his dark power, cannot bear to face himself. With his scheme shattered and the Thundercats victorious, Snarf is safely returned home, and the mutants, once again, are left to lick their wounds. Episode 61. Lion-O's Anointment. Final day. The final trial is here and is the most difficult of all. A test that will determine if he is truly worthy of leading the Thundercats. Unlike the previous trials, where he faced his fellow Thundercats this time, he must battle the ultimate evil alone. Mum-Ra. Without the Sword of Omens or any outside help, Lion-O has only his strength, courage, cunning and wisdom to rely on. Before the trial begins, Jagger appears, offering advice. But Lion-O, knowing this test is his to face alone, refuses. He chooses instead to trust in himself, in everything he has learned and endured. Mum-Ra, determined to stop Lion-O before he even reaches his pyramid, summons the mutants to ambush him. They trap him in an underground pit, an eerie, twisting labyrinth, not unlike Mum-Ra's own lair. Undeterred, Lion-O fights through every obstacle thrown in his path. A faceless boatman shrouded in mystery, a living ceiling that threatens to crush him, a monstrous one-eyed cocoon, and the blazing force of the Inflamer. Each challenge tests not just his physical abilities, but his wit, patience, and perseverance. At last, Lion-O emerges and reaches Mum-Ra's pyramid. The final battle begins. Mum-Ra, with his dark magic and ancient power, seems unstoppable, but as they clash, Lion-O realizes something crucial. Mum-Ra's true power comes from his sarcophagus. Without it, he cannot regenerate. Seizing the moment, Lion-O hurls the sarcophagus into the boiling cauldron. The moment it is destroyed, Mum-Ra's form crumbles to ash, and his reign of terror ends. Jaga appears once more, this time not to advise, but to praise. Lion-O has proven himself, not just in strength, but in wisdom, resilience, and leadership. He has walked the path alone, faced his greatest enemy, and emerged victorious. With this final triumph, he is officially anointed as Lord of the Thundercats. Lion-O's journey has been long and filled with challenges, but in the end, he proves that he is more than just a warrior. He is a true leader, ready to guide the Thundercats into the future. Episode 62, The Trouble with Thunder Kittens. Wily Cat and Wily Kit, eager to prove they are just as capable as the adult Thundercats, make a reckless decision. They secretly take the weapons of their older teammates to practice with them. However, their plan goes awry when the mutants intercept them, seizing the stolen weapons. In the chaos of a sudden skirmish, the Thunder Kittens lose sight of the weapons altogether. Rather than admit their mistake, they decide to fix it themselves. Determined to set things right, they embark on a risky mission to Castle Plundar. Fear gnaws at them, but their guilt pushes them forward. They manage to catch Munkian off guard, finding him admiring himself in the mirror while clumsily swinging Panthro's nunchucks. Their element of surprise, however, is short-lived. The mutants quickly overpower them, forcing them to flee, humiliated and empty-handed. With no other choice, the Thunder Kittens return home, ashamed and dreading the consequences of their actions. Eventually, they gather the courage to confess to Lion-O. Though disappointed and momentarily angry, he doesn't punish them. Instead, he devises a plan to retrieve the weapons together. Under Lion-O's leadership, they launch a strategic counterattack on Castle Plundar. The Thunder Kittens use their magic pellets to create distractions, slipping past the mutants while Lion-O engages them in battle. At a critical moment, a mutant heat ball forces Lion-O to drop the Sword of Omens. Thinking quickly, the Thunder Kittens unleash their magic. A tidal wave engulfs their foes, followed by a cloud of laughing gas, leaving the mutants incapacitated. With the upper hand, the Thundercats reclaim their weapons. Out of respect and forgiveness, Lion-O chooses not to reveal the Thunder Kittens' mistake to the others, understanding that they have already learned their lesson. Though they had stumbled, the Thunder Kittens proved their bravery and resourcefulness, just not in the way they had originally intended. Episode 63, Mum Rana. The Thunder Kittens, along with Panthro and Chitara, set off in the Feliner, leaving Lion-O, Tigra, and Snarf behind to guard the cat's lair. As the Feliner reaches outer space, the mutants suddenly emerge in their warship, the Ratstar, launching a surprise attack. Thinking fast, Panthro engages the cat's whiskers and executes a spinning maneuver, striking the Ratstar and crippling it. With their ship damaged, the mutants abandon it in escape pods, hurtling back toward Third Earth. However, before they can reach the surface, a strange force seizes them, drawing them into a massive, glowing white pyramid. Inside, they meet Mum Rana, an ancient sorceress of light and the complete opposite of Mum-Ra. Mistaking them for noble warriors, she rescues them, offering them sanctuary. Before long, however, Mum-Ra himself arrives. The two sorcerers engage in a fierce battle, but Mum-Ra's dark magic proves too powerful, and he ensnares Mum Rana under his spell. Twisting her mind, he convinces her that the Thundercats are her enemies. Fueled by this deception, Mum Rana unleashes her fury on the cat's lair, launching devastating energy bolts that shatter its iconic feline head. When Lion-O attempts to counter her with the Sword of Omens, she traps the blade in a cocoon of light. With the Thundercats overpowered, the mutants shackle Lion-O, Tigra, and Snarf, banishing them to a barren wasteland. In exile, Jaga's spirit appears to Lion-O, revealing that Mum Rana is good at heart, but ensnared by Mum-Ra's influence. If they can show her the truth, the spell will break. Inspired, Tigra sneaks into Castle Plundar, using his invisibility to plant a forged note from Mum-Ra, instructing the mutants to summon Mum Rana and attack Malchior, the wealthiest Tabot, as he travels through Unicorn Forest. The next day, the mutants ambush what appears to be a Tabot on a donkey, only to discover it's Lion-O in disguise. Confronted with the deception, Mum Rana realizes her mistake and breaks free of Mum-Ra's control. Furious, Mum-Ra attacks, but the arriving Thundercats force him to retreat when he catches his own reflection in the Feliner's polished hull. Episode 64, The Shifter. Inside the shadowy halls of Castle Plundar, Vultureman cackled with satisfaction as he put the finishing touches on his latest invention, a device capable of swapping bodies. Eager to test it, he aimed it at the unsuspecting Thundercats at Cat's Lair, where Panthro and Snarf were alone. In a flash, their minds switched bodies. When Vultureman revealed his triumph to Slythe and Jackalman, they scoffed at the idea. Irritated, he turned the shifter on them as well, swapping their bodies before realizing he hadn't yet figured out how to reverse the process. The mutants bickered in frustration, but soon recognized an opportunity. If they struck now, the Thundercats would be too disoriented to fight back. With that, they set off in their flying machine, heading for Cat's Lair. Meanwhile, inside the lair, Panthro and Snarf were reeling from their predicament. The mighty engineer found himself trapped in Snarf's small, clumsy body, while Snarf struggled to control Panthro's muscular frame. Determined to find help, they clambered into the Thunder Tank, only to discover that Snarf, in Panthro's body, had no clue how to drive it. As they lost control, the massive vehicle careened toward the bottomless chasm, coming to a precarious halt on a ledge. The mutants, spotting the stranded Thunder Tank from above, seized their chance and fired. The blast sent the tank tumbling down onto the ledge. Snarf, trapped in Panthro's body, was pinned beneath the wreckage, while Panthro, in Snarf's form, managed to crawl free and set off toward Cat's Lair. Not far away, Lion-O and Willycat were spaceboarding through the forest when the Sword of Omens flared to life, alerting them to danger. They raced to the chasm, where Lion-O used his strength to free Snarf. Without wasting time, they sped back toward the lair in the Thunder Tank. By the time they arrived, the mutants were already laying waste to the fortress. As the Thundercats engaged them, Vultureman unleashed the shifter once more, swapping Lion-O and Willycat's bodies. With neither able to properly wield the Sword of Omens alone, they joined hands, calling upon their comrades for aid. Desperate for victory, Vultureman turned the shifter on the Sword of Omens itself, hoping to disable it. But the Eye of Thundera had other plans. Absorbing the energy, it sent out a powerful surge, reversing the swaps among the Thundercats, and unexpectedly swapping Vultureman and Monkeyan instead. Disoriented and unable to fly the ship, Monkeyan crashed the flying machine, forcing the mutants to get away again. Episode 65, Fond Memories. Another day, another of Mum-Ra's schemes to trap the Thundercats in a twisted exhibition of his own making. He constructs a macabre museum, filling it with paintings of the Thundercats' fiercest foes, images that can come to life at his command, disguising himself as the eccentric doctor. Domitone, Mum-Ra lures Lion-O into the eerie gallery, eager to spring his trap. The moment Lion-O steps inside, the painting of Safari Joe stirs, and the hunter emerges, fully formed and ready for battle. Undeterred, Lion-O swiftly overcomes him, only for Rataro to follow suit. But the young leader proved himself once more, besting the rodent warrior just as easily. Frustrated by his faltering plan, Mum-Ra sheds his disguise, revealing his true, terrifying form. Determined to break Lion-O's spirit, he turns to the painting of Slythe, extracting a vial of warp gas and hurling it at the Thundercat. The toxic fumes cloud Lion-O's mind, filling him with fear unlike anything he has ever known. Overcome, he stumbles backward and flees. Meanwhile, Snarf, who had been searching for Thundrillium with Lion-O but was unable to enter the cave, races off to find the rest of the Thundercats. Responding swiftly, they charge into the cavern aboard the Thunder Tank. As they take in the bizarre scene, they realize the truth. Lion-O must be trapped within one of the paintings. Splitting up, the Thunder Kittens leap into Safari Joe's world while the others dive into Spidera's sinister domain. In a final, desperate gambit, Mum-Ra transforms into a dark doppelganger of Lion-O. Matched in strength and skill, the two warriors clash in an intense duel. But Lion-O, ever resourceful, turns the tide by using the Sword of Omens to reveal Mum-Ra's reflection. Overwhelmed with fear, the mummy is sent hurtling away. Wasting no time, Lion-O then wields the sword's power to free his comrades from the paintings, shattering Mum-Ra's wicked trap once and for all. And just like that, we've wrapped up Season 1 of Thundercats. But before we call it a day, let's take a moment to think about the show in earnest. Is this animated epic really the classic that fans say it is? When Thundercats first aired on TV in 1985, it really connected with audiences right away. People were really captivated by the exciting animation and the intense battles. Merchandise was flying off the shelves. Action figures, lunchboxes, and comic book adaptations really solidified its spot in pop culture. But, critics back then had all sorts of opinions too. While some really loved the imaginative world building and the lively action scenes, which frankly really stood out among the other animated series from the 80s. There are some folks who thought that the storytelling was a bit all over the place, with certain episodes really hitting hard, while others seemed like they were just there to fill time. So, if you grew up watching Thundercats, you know that nostalgia hits hard. But even more than that, the themes of the show, like leadership, honor, and perseverance, are still super relevant today. Even though some parts might seem a bit old-fashioned, the show's core and its big dreams still connect with both longtime fans and newcomers alike. Do remember to like our content and subscribe to our channel, because we are soon going to bring you many more this cartoon awesomeness, including Thundercats 2011.